prefer to keep me isolated.
It's called an anchor. Joe, he's ready for you.
There we go. We need that.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Moscow Board of Adjustments meeting for February the 7th, 2017. With that, let's get right to it. This meeting, we'll make this quick tonight with all of us. Everyone will get a chance to speak. But our first thing is going to be addressing the minutes from the last meeting. Does anybody have any comments with regards to those meeting minutes?
I think this was just when we approved the...
It was.
Then I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And one abstention? Two abstentions? With that, Marshall? And so with that, minutes are approved. Before I jump too much further, we have a new board member. So let's introduce that person. Explain your...
Hi, I'm Laureen Sorensen, and I'm honored to have just been appointed to the Board of Adjustment. And I look forward to working with you all tonight.
And we welcome you to the board.
You bet.
Now we have two newies, but you're experienced new person. All right. With that, I would actually like to move that we address the election of officers to the end of the meeting. Can I get a motion and a second to do so?
So moved, Joe.
What's that?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I know you all wanted to really listen to us elect each other, right? Okay. All right. With that, if the city would like to present the first conditional use for us tonight.
Gladly. You might, Joe, know I have to recuse myself for the record.
Jerry has to accuse himself from this meeting, so he's going to come out and join you, and then he's going to come back up and spend the rest of the night with us. Oh, before you start, I turned mine to silent. There's a lot of us tonight. If you could just double check and make sure that you're on vibrate or silent, that would be very much appreciated.
Okay, well, good evening, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Board. Good evening, members of the public. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ryan Cash with the City Community Development Department, and our first order of presentation is regards to a conditional use permit application for Lot 25, Anderson First Edition, Sunnyside Avenue, or from here on out, we'll refer them to Police Prairie Charter School. The proposal is the applicant is proposing to operate a 13,280 square foot K-8 public charter school with a 4,000 square foot detached multi-purpose room on the western of the 2.35 acre parcel at Lot 25, Block 4, Anderson First Edition, north of Sunnyside Avenue. The school, named Police Prairie Charter School, will operate from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Friday, for up to 220 students with 15 teachers and staff. The operating characteristics is the school operates on a traditional school schedule with school session beginning in August through June during normal operation. It's anticipated that the hours beyond normal use would include open houses, teacher work days, after-school programs, and board meetings. The school's mission is to engage the children and the community of the Palouse in a rigorous and collaborative education of the highest standards by fostering a spirit of inquiry, a persistence towards excellence, a responsibility for learning, and an ethics of service. The subject property is located, as stated before, in the Anderson First Edition. The adjoining property uses is Anderson Park to the west. To the south, we have a private road of Pearl Circle and Garnet Court. And then we have Palouse River Drive to the south perimeter, undeveloped property to the southeast. To the west, the subject property had a lot division, so that current area is actually undeveloped. And then to the north, we have Anderson Circle and local other areas. So a little bit of background about the property. On July 12th, 1993, there was a city council meeting. The subject property was rezoned from farm, ranch, and outdoor recreation to R3 and R4 with 3 conditions. The first, the density shall be limited to 2,000 square feet per dwelling unit. Number 2, the building shall be limited to 1 story exclusive of basements. And number 3, there shall be dedicated to the City of Moscow a pedestrian pathway minimum of 10 feet in width, extended from Latah Care Center to Frontier or Anderson Park at the time. Again, on October 20th, 1993, Anderson First Edition was approved by the City Council. Anderson First Edition is phased into 7 phases. Currently, all but the 7th phase is complete. On October 9th, 2010, there was a City Council meeting where the City Council unanimously voted in favor of Anderson First Edition to reach an development agreement, which basically states that the development agrees to install all required public improvements. The developer shall install the required improvements for Phase 7 of Anderson First Edition within 9 months from the date of the first issuance of building permits. And here is that said attachment. As you can see, we have the 7th phase to the south. And essentially, this means that any development whatsoever on that particular location, whoever decides to elect to have that particular development would be required to have improvements, which would include having Sunnyside connected from the north to the south. A little bit of background continued. On January 17th in 2017, the City Council meeting unanimously voted in favor of a lot split of Lot 25, Block 4, which divided the property into 2 lots. The western parcel is 2.25 acres in size and is subject of the Palouse Prairie Charter School. And the remaining eastern lot is 1.34 acres and is not part of the conditional use request. Again, the importance of this is to note that while there is a overall comprehensive plan for having that Sunnyside Avenue connected, it's not pertinent to the conditional use process. The public hearing is in regards to whether or not this particular property is safe and conducive of having a K-8 elementary school, not the overall developments required for whatever development happens within that site. All right, taking a look at zoning, as we can see, the subject property with the lot division is highlighted in red. The westerly portion is, again, the area to be developed. As you can see, there's R3 to the north and then separated by R4 to the south, continuing on down to Palouse River Drive to the south, and then we have to the east we have R4 as well, and along the north and to the west we have R1. So the stipulations on an R3 zoning district, the minimum lot width is 20 feet for townhome dwellings, 60 feet for single and 2-family dwellings. The minimum lot area is 2,000 square feet for townhomes, 5,000 square feet for single and 2-family dwellings. Max building height is 35 feet, and the required setbacks are the front feet 15 feet, 20 feet for a garage facing the street. The rear is 20 feet. The street side is 13 feet, or 20 feet if there's garage facing the street. And the side, 5 feet. The sum of two shall not be less than 10 feet. The conditional uses on these sites are schools, commercial schools, and education institutions. And supplementary regulations would require a 12-foot type A planting buffer located between zoning districts. Essentially, this means that there'd be a visual and auditory 12-foot buffer that's consisting of plants and evergreen plants and deciduous trees to separate the 2 zones from R1 to an R3 and R1 to an R4. Looking at the R4 zoning districts, minimum lot width for townhome dwellings is 18 feet. Single and multiple family dwellings are 50 feet. Minimum lot areas for townhome dwellings is 1,800 feet. Single and multiple family dwellings is 5,000 square feet. And the setbacks, the front is 15 feet, 20 feet for a garage facing the street. The rear is 20 feet. The street side is 13 feet, or 20 for a garage facing the street. And the side is 5 feet. The sum of two shall not be less than 15 feet. Conditional uses, again, same as follows. Schools, commercial schools, and education institutions. Supplementary regulations, again, state that the 12-foot type A planting buffer should be located between the zoning districts. So as you can see, we have the overall site plan. To the northeast, you'll see the current location of the subject property and the proposed location in relationship to where it's going to be located. We'll go into a little bit further detail on the circulation, but as you can see, the primary access would actually be south of US 95, which is identified as a state highway, and the arterial would be Palouse River Drive to the south as a primary means of ingress and egress to the site. Again, talking about access, the primary vehicle and pedestrian routes from the existing facility, primary access from southbound State Highway 95, west onto Palouse River Drive. And then again, there's, as you can see, there's right up there, there's no sidewalk access from 95 to the existing site from Sunnyside. The Public Works Thoroughfare Plan designates State Highways 95 as a national highway and Palouse River Drive as a minor arterial. Both have posted speed limits of 35 miles per hour for this path. The secondary vehicle and pedestrian routes from the existing site. Secondary access would be from Conestoga eastbound onto Palouse River Drive in the similar fashion here. And no sidewalk access in front of the Bridge Bible Fellowship. Oh, let me go back there. And as you can see, there is no public sidewalk at this point either. So connectivity is big, especially for students and any other pedestrian traffic onto that site. So currently, there's no existing vehicular pedestrian access to the subject property. These are pictures taken at the intersection of Pearl Circle and on what's the existing current street of Sunnyside Avenue. And then this particular shot here is shot from Pearl Circle looking to the subject property with the extension of Sunnyside right there. Again, Pearl Circle and Garnet Court are private roads, so vehicular access is not permitted within those particular areas. And again, the developer must provide public roadway improvements at the time of a building permit file. So as we go further along, we'll go into the conceptual site plan. These were presented to us from the design team from Palouse Prairie. And as you can see, you can see the new school facility with a proposed circulation plan and the new multi-purpose building. And the areas in gray would be new paving within the area. And the preliminary plan that the city actually sat down with the design team and we were able to hash out some details indicates the required planting strip, the 10-foot path through the property, and then the feedback from other jurisdictions in regards to engineering, as well as a roundabout with fire access to the building. Here we have some elevations of the subject property. This is looking from the south, and then this is looking from the east side of the property. And here we have an isometric view with some of the proposed color plans on the school. And the overall floor plans, it's a little bit grainy, but you can see they provided the conceptual floor plans for the school, as well as the elevations and the floor plans for the multi-purpose room. Department feedback. City engineer indicated the sewer and hydrant taps would be drawn from the Sunnyside Avenue by way of Palouse River Drive. City Fire Marshal requested to have a 96-foot turning radius within the roundabout and fenced fire access between the multi-purpose room. Both requirements have been met on the site design. And City Parks and Recreation had no comment for or against the development. Again, Panhandle Health District was included in these emails, and they stated that they would only be involved with the lunchroom aspect of the building plan once it comes time for the building review process. Considerations, there is a subject property is required to provide a Type A landscape buffer between R1 and R3, R4 zones, and that has been met according to the included site plan. Type A planting buffer is used to screen between two different zoning densities as required, utilizing a combination of shrubs and trees, both evergreen and deciduous, to create a visual and auditory buffer, as stated before. And again, they provided a 10-foot wide pedestrian path from Sunnyside Avenue to Anderson Frontier Park, meeting the design criteria set forth on those existing 1993 conditions. So again, here we have the preliminary plan that can show that. And conditional use recommendation: upon the review of submitted materials, it's the staff's determination that the proposal meets all the conditions of the 1993 rezone. The height of the buildings are proposed to be 1 story, and a 10-foot wide pedestrian pathway has been extended from Sunnyside Avenue to the eastern boundary of Anderson Frontier Park. We recommend approval of the application for the conditional use permit for the 2.25 acre portion of Lot 25, Block 4, Anderson First Edition, to the City of Moscow for a public K-8 charter school with one condition. The applicant shall create that 10-foot wide pedestrian path to the City of Moscow via a public pedestrian easement. Any questions? Marshall?
Yeah, Ryan, is the subject property, is it all R3 or is it split between R3 and R4?
It's split between R3 and R4, and let me go back to that particular slide so you can see that a little bit better. Breezing through it, you don't get a quick look, but So as you can see, that particular location, it's almost halfway split from R3 and R4.
Do you anticipate that in the future that they would come and ask for a rezone so that the subject property was all in the same zone?
No, not in this particular case. The intent is to work within the bounds of the restrictions already on the site, and with between the difference between R3 and R4 both requiring a conditional use permit for a K-8 school, it meets the standards either way. They've met the setback, they've met some of those other existing conditions, but looking for a rezone for that particular property, that would not be in the best interest of this particular location.
Do you foresee, or Mike, do you foresee any problems with a split zone like going through a building?
No, like Ryan mentioned, it's a conditional use regardless of the R3 or R4 zones.
Right.
So really the only difference would be a little bit of lot sizes, but then again, it's over a couple acres in size, so it meets all those requirements. Setbacks are virtually the same, so they're pretty comparable zones, and they're both require a conditional use permit. So, yeah, we don't have any issue with that.
Okay. Thanks, Ryan.
Any other questions for City? I have one. The last comment that you said, the 10-foot sidewalk needs to be or is recommended to be a condition of this, that is something separate from street improvements that are separate from this?
Correct.
That's a totally different issue?
Correct. So part of that would be dating back to that 1993 rezoning request. That particular area would have to be maintained or have a right-of-way designated for the city to be able to have that connectivity.
Gotcha.
So
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Since we have a lot of people here tonight, I don't normally preface these meetings with this, but just so that everyone understands how this process works, we'll have the owner or the owner's representative come up and talk about their project. Then we'll open it up to the general public. We'll start with people in favor of, and then we'll switch to people who have issues against it. And then I'll turn it back over to the owner or owner's representative to make final comments, and then we close the public hearing. Then the board will deliberate, we'll make a decision, and then we'll move on to the next conditional use permit that we have tonight for some of you that are probably going to be waiting for that. If anybody here has been to a meeting that I've run, I like to keep them, they're not informal, but I like to keep them friendly. I want everyone to have an opportunity to speak their mind. But because we have so many here, and I want everyone to be able to speak, I need you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. The other thing is, and the city kind of pointed this out, the street has to go through. That's not part of the conditional use. The conditional use permit, as a board, we have to base that on 7 criteria. So I would ask that in addition to limiting your comments to 3 minutes, please don't repeat what someone else said, and I'm going to take just a brief second to read the 7 criteria so that you know what it is we have to make our decision on, so that your comment, whether pro or con, is relative to those. So, bear with me. Criteria 1, the proposed use is or is not a conditional use, or excuse me, a conditionally permitted use within the zoning district. The second criteria is that the character of proposed use will or will not be in harmony with the neighborhood and surrounding land uses. The third criteria is that the proposed use as approved or as approved with conditions will or will not generate nuisances that would be injurious to adjoining properties. The fourth criteria is the location, design, and size of the proposed use will or will not be adequately served by the existing streets, public facilities, and services. The fifth criteria is the proposed use will or will not endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed. The sixth condition is proposed use meets or does not meet all applicable development standards of the zoning code. And the seventh criteria that we assess is the proposed use will or will not be in conflict with the comprehensive plan. So with that, if you can keep your comments, again, limited to 3 minutes, try not to duplicate what someone else has already said, and try to make your comments relative to those conditions so that they're of value to us as we discuss it as a group. I would much appreciate that. And yes.
Put borders over there for people that haven't signed in because we need the name and address for public record.
Oh, yes. As you come up to the podium, please write in your name and address on the clipboard. Also state it into the mic so that it's on the record. Some of us may have doctor-type signatures that aren't easy to read. So if you'll please state your name and address into the mic so it's on the record and write your name on that clipboard, we would appreciate that as well. And with that, would the owner or owner's representative like to come up and tell us about the project?
Good evening. My name is Catherine Janelle Brannon. My address is 206 North Van Buren Street in Moscow. I wanted to share just a bit of history about Palouse Prairie. Palouse Prairie Charter School opened under the Expeditionary Learning Model in 2009 with 69 students, grades K through 5. Our current space provided an affordable option for us, though it wasn't ideal. We always knew that it was a temporary space for us. Since 2009, we have grown to 174 students, expanding to 8th grade. 95% of our students reside in Moscow area, and their families pay the local taxes. We do not receive the local tax revenue. The possibility to build a new school that provides green space to play, and exposure to the natural world, an outdoor classroom, is a rare opportunity given the financial restrictions. It is our growth and stability that has allowed us to move forward in pursuing our dream of a new facility that will better meet the needs of our students. Tonight we have 3 middle school students representing our school, and they're going to share why they feel it's important to move into this new space.
My name is Julia Brannon. I live at 206 North Van Buren Street in Moscow, Idaho, and I go to Palouse Prairie Charter School. At our current building, we have some concerns about safety. When students walk or bike to school, they have to cross a large, busy highway. This is especially dangerous considering the only form of safely getting students across the street is having a crossing guard. And this crossing guard has been bumped multiple times by cars, which most recently resulted in broken ribs. The reason for this is that there's no stoplight, and the city has no plans of adding one in this location. This is the same highway we have to cross to get to the nearest green space, Berman Park. As a result, we often choose to stay on campus where we play in a small, concrete playground which used to be a parking lot and is situated right next to that busy highway. There are several concerns around this situation. First, it is certainly not enjoyable to be around noise and air pollution coming from vehicles on the highway. Secondly, our basketballs can bounce over the fence into the highway, which is potentially dangerous to drivers and teachers retrieving the ball. Lastly, another safety concern is evacuation during our fire drills. During fire drills, we practice safe evacuation from the building, but how safe are we? Many grades have to cross several streets to a safe location. Other grades, including our kindergartners, evacuate onto the sidewalk a few feet away from the busy Highway 95. At the new school location, we wouldn't have to cross busy streets or line up next to a highway during fire drills, which is especially important because you never know when it won't be a drill. Although we acknowledge that roads will still have to be crossed in order to get to school, we won't have to cross the highway during PE in order to get to a grass field. This is important because PE is every day, and this would make PE safer and more enjoyable, especially considering there will be more time to play games since there's no long walk in order to get to the field. At the new building, our hopes of green grass, parks, and student safety can become a reality. We love the work we do in our school, but we need a new building and a new space.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Alexander Behrman Drummond. I live outside of Viola on 1050 Appett Road, and I'm a Police Prairie Charter School student. I'm here to talk about the benefits of the new playground space at our new building compared to our current playground space. Our current playground is a converted concrete parking lot, which isn't very fun. We feel that we should have the chance to experience green fields, just like other schools. Our playground is also very loud because of the highways and roads next to it. In fact, our building often vibrates from the loud semis that travel past our building frequently. Our playground is quite small and usually feels cramped. Since there is no grass, we often walk to acquire green spaces. The only way to get to a place with grass is a long walk to a park, which takes up most of our recess time by itself. Now that you have heard about our current playground, it is time to move on to the newer one. The new space is 2.25 acres of grass, which means that there is plenty of space to run around in and enjoy. The large space would also remove that cramped feeling our current one has. The new space is grassed, so when we fall, we wouldn't get hurt. It is also much quieter than our current one, which means that we wouldn't have to shout over each other, shout over the noise to hear each other. The quiet space will allow us to spend time in nature as scientists and quiet observers. In the winter months, we spend a lot of time in the multi-purpose room on our small climbing wall. Our new multi-purpose building would have plenty of space to build a larger one. With all of those reasons, I hope you can see why that new playground space would greatly benefit us.
Thank you.
My name is Kaya Dibdahl, and I live on 1130 Driscoll Ridge Road, Troy, Idaho. I attend Palouse Prairie Charter School. Palouse Prairie has always focused on ways of incorporating the enhancement of our community and the betterment of our world into our final products. This is sometimes hindered by our current location and the poor condition of our school building. As part of our curriculum, we embark on intensive semester or trimester-long case studies, which we call expeditions, and create projects at the end of each case study that connect our expeditions with the outside world, called final products. Our new school building will allow us to incorporate some of the things that mean most to us, including connections to our community, being stewards of our world, focusing on hands-on learning, service and compassion, and our core traits and principles of learning. But most of all, readying students for the outside world, where they can find their own passion and, along the way, inspire, befriend, illuminate, and ultimately change the world. Our new building and location will allow us to focus on the core principles and values of Palouse Prairie. As a school, we want to be able to make connections to the natural world, service compassion, and our community. With our current location, this is a difficult task as we are inhibited by the parameters of the building. Our school building has few real walls inside of it, making it difficult for us to do as much interactive work as we would like. Our new location would have a quieter, safer learning environment, as well as an outdoor space. We would be able to more easily create an outdoor classroom and incorporate the outdoors and nature into our curriculum. We already have ideas of how we can enhance the neighborhood we will be with in our new school building. We envision creating a community garden as one of our final products, or making educational signs for the native plants that live in Anderson Frontier Park. As a school, it is our belief that students have the power to change the world. We have started this at the community level. For example, in kindergarten, students conducted an in-depth study of earthworms, in which they studied earthworms with scientist Dr. Jody Johnson by digging up a square foot of earth and examining the amount of and type of worms they saw. Their final product consisted of an earthworm book for all children of the Palouse. This case study would have greatly benefited from the outdoor space that will be provided at our new school building because in our old space, kindergartners had trouble finding an outdoor open area in which to dig for worms so that they could study them. Another kindergarten expedition was about gardening, in which they created a greenhouse made out of recycled plastic bottles. As a final product for our new school, they could instead create a community garden containing flowering plants and produce. This would be beneficial not only to our students, but the community as well. As third graders, students created a scat and species identification board for Phillips Farm. Our 6th grade students conducted a watershed assessment of the PCEI Nature Center in order to explore how physical, chemical, and biological parameters are used to describe water quality. This poster is still being utilized by the Palouse Clearwater Environmental Institute. Former 8th grade students engaged in an expedition digging into geography, cartography, and exploration. Their work culminated by using GPS units to hike and document unmapped trails at Idler's Rest, a local trailhead for the Palouse Land Trust. Their map is now publicly available to the community of the Palouse for their recreational enjoyment. These expeditions all highlight our mission of students becoming stewards of the natural world and providing service to their community. This also exhibits our need for an outdoor classroom. With the new school, we would be able to make final products more easily, adding compelling twists, which would inspire others to dig deeper into the topics we studied. As students, we would have more space to play outside and could more easily incorporate the community into service projects. Kindergartners would now be able to learn about earthworms in their own school backyard. Your decision tonight impacts over 175 students on the Palouse. For the last 8 years, ever since I was a first grader, I haven't had the same opportunity to play on green spaces during recess or PE. I haven't had a building well suited for the type of learning Palouse Prairie does. I hope my testimony sheds light on the importance of this space for all future Palouse Prairie students. As I said before, we, as students, believe that we have the ability to make a positive impact on the world. And tonight, I hope my voice makes a difference on the education of the present and future students of Palouse Prairie.
Thank you.
I wanted to share some information about our transportation plan. We recognize that that this may be a concern, and that students will be traveling in 3 different ways to school. Over half of our students take the bus or walk to school. So this is the plan for students taking the bus to travel from the middle school down Highway 95 up Palouse River Drive to the Sunnyside, where they will then take the drop-off loop. This is the plan for students walking to school. We anticipate that they would walk through the neighborhood down along Sunnyside Avenue to on the new sidewalk, or take the 10-foot paved path from the other direction. And then lastly, we would anticipate that our families and encourage and educate them to take Highway 95 down Palouse River Drive, up Sunnyside, and around our drop-off loop. Thank you.
Thank you. And for you 3 kids, I don't know if your teachers are here, but if it was up to me, you just earned a lot of extra credit. Okay, with that said, I'd like to open up the public portion of our hearing to those who would like to speak in favor of this conditional use permit. And again, please state your name and address in the microphone and also write it on the clipboard.
I'm Jim Westberg. I'm an attorney for the landowner LLF Inc. Ryan did a good job of addressing this. Joe, you did a good job, but if you'll indulge me for about 30 seconds here, I need to address this. There's been some publication tying the creation or completion of Sunnyside to this project. I want to assure the board and the concerned citizens the owner has filed paperwork with the city, and barring some unexpected event like snow still in July, Sunnyside will be completed this fall regardless of this project or any other project.
Okay.
So I just want us all on the same facts, and thank you for indulging me on that.
Please don't be bashful. There's a lot of you out there.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Erhard Hudson. I reside at 407 North Jefferson Street. I had the honor of serving for 3 years on the board of the Palouse Prairie School, and I have both of my children have attended there. One of them, my daughter, who's here tonight, is in 6th grade and has been there since she was in kindergarten. I would like to address mainly the second and third points that you mentioned of what you need to consider, which I would sum up as being, will this school be a good neighbor? I would say that these children have proven time and time again that they are not only good neighbors but good citizens. Again and again, when they do their expeditions and they do their research in the community and meet community experts and community civic leaders, the uniform feedback that we ever get from them are, these are the most well-prepared, polite, well-behaved, and informed young people that we ever have worked with. These children are good citizens of the community, and this school is a good neighbor to the community. And I cannot imagine any neighborhood where that would not be specifically true. They work with people, they learn their neighbors, they learn who they're working with, and they solve problems. Not only solve problems for the world, but they solve problems with whoever they're working with. So I have no doubt at all that the neighborhood will be more than enhanced by the presence of this school. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Holly Wickman. I live at 2075 Sunnyside, house number 6, and my kids don't go to this school. I hope my grandson might someday. I cannot think of a better neighbor, a better use of this land to enhance the neighborhood than this school, and I look forward to volunteering there if I'm ever old enough.
Hello, my name is Kieran Long. I live at 2275 Henry Court in Moscow. I'm a 5th grader at Palouse Prairie Charter School, and I've attended there since 2011. I'm here tonight asking you to approve the conditional use permit for Palouse Prairie Charter School. Having the new building will help every student and teacher at Palouse Prairie Charter School because there will be a lot more space for students and teachers to work, learn, play, and grow. Part of our school's core principles is working outside and connecting with the natural world. Having the new building will allow accessing the natural world easier by giving us easy access to 2 city parks and our own space around the building. Building the new location will give us much needed space because right now our building is bursting with all the exciting things we are doing, such as growing lettuce in a handmade hydroponic system. Right now that's in the middle of a hallway. Another exciting thing we do is raise steelhead to flat fry hood, then release them into the wild, but right now that takes place in the same hallway as the hydroponic system. Having the new building will allow us to continue these activities while having room for all the other exciting things we want to do. Thank you for listening. I hope you'll consider granting our conditional use permit.
Thank you. Aha, a soccer player.
Hi, my name is Kelton Long. I live at 2275 Henry Court in Moscow, Idaho. I'm a student at Palouse Prairie Charter School. I am asking you to grant our permit for a new school. One of the reasons I think the new location would be better is because of our adventure program. Each Friday, a class goes on an adventure like rock climbing, biking, or skiing. If we have the new location, we have more space to prepare for them. Like there's a public bicycle park across the street. We have space to make a rock wall, and we can easily access 2 city parks. Thank you for listening. I hope you consider granting our permit.
They didn't sign in. We'll let them pass. My name is Donna Mills, and I live at 1115 Yeoman Lane. I signed in early because I planned on chatting. I also want to express to people that might be concerned about what kind of good neighbors this school might be is they may not know the philosophy under which the school operates, which is the crew philosophy, that we are crew members and not passengers, that we work together. We're all on the same ship and we're going through this community. And within the projects that our children take on in their expeditions, they're also bringing the community in onto the ship with us and partnering in a way that exponentially expands their experiences. So for those of you that don't know what CREW stands for, it means to be courageous and to be responsible and to be empathetic and to be welcoming. And that is what we're going to always put into place when we are working with any neighbors that we have. I think that the kids have made a great argument for their outdoor space, and I have to just second that because my daughter is a sixth grader at that school. She's been attending Palouse Prairie since she was in the sixth grade, and if this conditional permit is approved and the school goes through, she could be the first eighth grader that would graduate from that school in the new building, and she's super excited about that. So thanks so much.
My name is Anna Steffens. I live at 1155 Driscoll Ridge Road in Troy, Idaho. I attended Palouse Prairie from my 3rd grade year all the way up into my 8th grade when I graduated. And I'm really excited to be talking for the school tonight. So I believe that the school building is not only going to benefit the members of the school itself, but of the surrounding community. Part of Palouse Prairie's culture is really focused on the natural world, and that's one of our 10 design principles that we learn from, and it encourages students to learn about and become a positive influence on that world. Having safer access to a park will allow students to explore their connection with the outdoors without the added hassle of having to cross a busy highway. The current Palouse Prairie building only has a small outdoor area that doesn't even have grass. On top of that, access to the bigger park, Berman Park, involves crossing 10 to 24 students across a busy highway, and even with a crossing guard, that intersection remains dangerous. My mom is the crossing guard for that school, and I hear several stories about close calls with being bumped, and even a while ago she was hit by a rear view mirror or a side mirror on a car, and she has a cracked rib now. So relocation would create less stress on the families that have their kids walk to school and less stress on the family of the crossing guard. It would also It would also create more service opportunities, as students are always looking for ways to give back to their surrounding community. And as a graduate of the school, I have learned so much more than I think I could have at any other school, and I've participated in so many more service projects than I have seen from any other school that any of my friends have been to, and I feel that Palouse Prairie really provides an awesome foundation for students going into high school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Karen Ward, 4961 Linville Road in Moscow. My sons were at Palouse Prairie from its inception. My younger one is a 7th grader there now. And I'd like to just briefly say that I want to, sorry, I'm not very articulate. One of the principles of Palouse Prairie, their scholarship, principles of scholarship at Palouse Prairie is grit. And that's obviously keeping at something, keeping at your studies until you get it. And what I want to say about Palouse Prairie is that the parents, the children, the faculty, we have grit. Palouse Prairie's been going for 8 years now, and we are not quitting. And my youngest is going to graduate next year, so theoretically I could give up. But Palouse Prairie's a wonderful addition to this community, especially for those of us who had children that really needed a different environment than a larger public school. And so we're not going away. If we can't build this building, we'll be asking for a conditional use permit for another place someplace down the road, because we're here to stay.
Good evening. My name is Todd Broadman, and I live at 489 Paradise Drive here in Moscow, and it is 2 blocks away from where the school is going to be. And we have 2 children at the school, a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old. The 9-year-old's going on his 4th year there, and we absolutely love the school and the staff and the teachers and hate the current location. I was thrilled to hear of a neighbor who shared with you that she is going to volunteer for the school, because one of the benefits that I want to raise is that quality of life, I think, in the neighborhood is enhanced significantly, particularly with retireds who want to volunteer, those who don't have children but would like to hear them in the neighborhood. We frequent Anderson Park, and it's such a wonderful facility to have, and oftentimes we're the only ones there. And I heard one of the students mention that they'll be doing lots of projects there. And again, I think that just helps to integrate that section of Moscow, that southwest section, which doesn't have a school to anchor it right now. And so I want to add that I think that the property values, at least from, again, a property owner speaking here, will be enhanced as well. We heard from some students who travel all the way in from Troy to go to the school, so it's an attractive school regardless of geography. And so we're thrilled to have a school close by, of course, but also thrilled from an investment standpoint as well. We're not concerned about perhaps some added vehicular traffic there in the neighborhood. We look to Lena and McDonald, and we've traveled along the corridors there, and I think that that precautions will be made if this is granted. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Deanne Eisenberg. I live at 2700 South Mountain View, and I'm here. We have property across the park from this project, and also my mother is the most directly impacted. So we're not against the school, but we have some concerns we'd like you to seriously address. And can we show the site map again? Because it does not show my mother's house, which is right along the proposed 10-foot path. And the 10-foot path that is proposed will actually drop right on top of the city sewer manholes.
Mr.
And it's
Chair?
a very steep part.
I believe it's still
there.
testimony in support of the application.
These are questions. Can I ask questions about it? We're not against it.
Sure.
We're just asking for questions and to make sure the conditions are harmony was part of the thing that was written, and we just want to make sure the harmony is there.
Sure.
So I just want to be able to better understand. So if you look at the south of the property, the big bare spot that is at the dead end street up on top of Pearl, up higher, There you go. My mother lives right there. There's a house there, actually. So that whole property line, when they originally talked about putting a school here, we had asked that there would be a solid fence that would help with the sound, because at the time my mother purchased, and many other people in this area, they understood it was a senior area. And so the sound of the children, they're not against the sound, they love children, but it would be immediately over my mother's house. And so we had asked, and we do ask, that there be a 6-foot solid fence that would help block that sound. Now, you also propose to have that 10-foot walkway, and where the little jog is that goes down to the park, there's a tree, and actually it's a huge tree. That's a very steep area, so a lot of the kids cut through, and we're worried about them cutting through her property and the back side of her property. And I don't see how you can put that 10-foot walkway over the top of the big manhole covers. So that's something that needs to be considered. The other question that we have is about the dead-end street there. And on the site plan, that's right at the parking lot and where the walkway starts. And so will there be a way to have a gate or something so the kids are not tempted to walk through the senior housing? And the only reason we ask that is for their safety, because there is no sidewalk, the streets are narrow, and nothing personal, but these are older people. And, backing up out of the driveways and stuff, it's not conducive to have children going in and out of their area. So you can see right where the parking and the parking lot and that. And I'm not sure what kind of a gate. I know they have to have emergency access there. So we are concerned about that. And the other question that I had was in discussing the zoning requirements, it said that 35-foot height is allowed, but that this is a single-story proposal. And as long as that is part of the requirements, that's awesome, because I know all the seniors there were really concerned about having several-story buildings there. So if it is required and they keep that standard of a single story, that's great. So I just wanted those concerns to be looked at and addressed before the approval. Thank you.
Wait. I'm Zachary Williams. I live at 421 Victoria Drive. I am here to talk about the safer routes to school, because right now, when I walk from my house to the school, there is a ton of snow in the way of that, and I have to walk over that to get to the school. Yeah. Well, the current school.
Anybody else care to come up and speak in favor of this project?
Hi, I'm Bridget Berg. My address is 723 Resident Street in Moscow, Idaho. I'm very nervous. Speaking to kids is a lot different. I'm the 5th grade teacher at Pleasant Prairie, and I did not prepare anything today, but the natural area has been discussed, safety has been discussed, but teaching, being an effective teacher, has not been discussed, and right now our school does not have walls. Sorry, I'm so nervous. So oftentimes our school is very based on active learning. Protocols, lots of discussion, lots of group projects. And so it's very difficult to have an active classroom when the classrooms next door are also in session. Teachers are constantly having to monitor noise level even when our students aren't being that loud. Another thing that's tricky is that when our students are taking an assessment, when they are trying to get lost in a book, when they're trying to do a close read of a complex text, and the classrooms next door are being active, it's hard for our students to focus on what they're supposed to do. And oftentimes my students will say, Ms. Berg, can you please go tell the other classroom to be quiet? And I say, well, no, because lots of times we're being loud too, and they have to put up with us. So just having walls and being able to let us teach and not have to worry about other classes' noise or our own classroom's noise would greatly impact our school positively and let us be better teachers. Thanks.
I see Bridget signing the form. That reminds me to remind you all, please sign that. Thanks.
My name is Trish Gardner. I live at 937 North Grant Street in Moscow, and I also work at the school. I work as administrative assistant in the front office, and I'm only up here because I'm not seeing anyone else come to address the concern of the woman who spoke to people before. And I wanted to say that it seems to me from the site plan that the largest amount of green space is to the north, and I would imagine that most of the recess time would be spent in the larger area to the north, and then during the winter time, most of that recess PE time will be in the large multi-purpose building to the north. As for students walking through private property, I want to stress that the students, during school hours, our students will always be accompanied by one or more adults. We hold them to the highest standards, and we would be extremely conscientious about being respectful to our community neighbors. So as we pass, oftentimes currently students will go on field work to other locations in town, and they walk. And we're always very conscientious about how we cross roads and how we are respectful of the buildings and the people we walk past. And that would continue. I mean, we would be very conscientious about that. And I do also believe that our students are extremely well behaved. I have a 6th grader there and have accompanied her class on numerous field work. And we have been told numerous times by Woodland Park Zoo in Seattle, by the Museum of Arts and Culture in Spokane, and other people, these are the best students we have ever had here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come up and speak in favor of this CUP? While she's signing, I'll address another question that you had. On the plans, the ridge height, which would be the tallest part of the school, is only 22'8", which is well below 35 feet, and I would venture to say is probably lower than some of the houses in that area. So to answer that question, it's not a huge ominous structure.
Hi, my name is Marissa Gibler. I live at 425 Veach Street in Moscow. I have statements from my children that go to Police Prairie, and I'm bringing them up even though they're a little bit repetitive. They're very short and succinct, so I can tell them that they got a voice. My son, Avi, in 5th grade in Miss Berg's class, and I asked him what the 2 things he thought were most important to tell you, like if he could be here and let you know. And he said, we need walls at our school. That was the first thing he said. And we need room for a kitchen. That's something that hasn't been discussed yet. We currently are purchasing lunches from the school district, but we buy them as though they're a contractor, so we pay higher prices. A lot of our students are lower income. This would be a great opportunity to be able to use resources that we grow in school gardens, healthier lunches, things that would be more appealing to the kids. So this would give us room to prepare meals. That's obvious. And then my daughter in 2nd grade says we need a playground with grass, and it would be safer to be further from the highway. So those were my kids' statements. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other takers to come up and speak in favor of this CUP? Fair enough. Okay, that said, are there any folks who would like to come up and speak against this CUP?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
We have 3 email correspondence for people within the neighborhood that had inquired about not being in favor of this particular development.
Okay.
If I may.
Yes, please. You're going to read them into the record for us?
Correct.
Perfect.
Okay, so the first one is from Claire Beeson on 454 Ridge Road. She states, I'm writing in regards to the conditional use permit request by Police Prairie Charter School to build their new school in Anderson Addition at the south end of Sunnyside Avenue, as well as the city's intent to develop Sunnyside Avenue through the Police River Drive if said conditional use permit is approved. I live on Ridge Road and believe that the location of the school and opening of the street to Police River Drive would considerably increase vehicular traffic in the neighborhood, adversely affecting the quality of life for me and my neighbors. I'm not able to attend the city council meeting tonight, Tuesday, 2/7/17 at 7 p.m. I'd like to voice my opposition to this subject. Thank you. The next one is from Andrea and Edmund Chavez at 506 Ridge Road. Dear Mr. Cash, I am unable to attend tonight's meeting and planning and zoning meeting. Should be Board of Adjustments meeting, but I'd like to join my neighbors in concern about the prospect of the connectivity. Again, we had mentioned that. If I may breeze over that a little bit. Their concern is that the overall traffic flow. Sunnyside is steep and has issues with cars not being able to get up in the wintertime, and so there's circulation concerns. And so they would be showing concerns on behalf of access to Highway 95. Let's see. Again, there's certain things I can't discuss in regards to this. Again, they're concerning adding even more road traffic to this area, with people dropping kids off and people wanting to perceive shortcut to the highway, will make these corners extremely hazardous, to say the least. We have many new young families in our neighborhood with kids and dogs and cats everywhere. Also, the opening of access from Conestoga has already been a great deal of traffic to our neighborhood, but people going to and from Police Prairie could use that connection if needed. Let's see here. Again, with this is in regards to comments. I can submit this for the record as well, but this is in regards to the Sunnyside going through. So the final one is from Mrs. Mary Konitz on 602 Ridge Road. City of Moscow Public Board of Adjustment. I'd like to make a strong objection to the approval of a conditional use permit for Police Prairie Charter School to build a new school in Anderson Addition at the south end of Sunnyside. As I understand it, the city intends to develop Sunnyside through Police River Drive if the conditional permit is approved. Again, it's in regards to connecting Sunnyside through Ridge Road. And as she said, that it goes on to say that this road over the years has seen increased traffic in a very large amount, which has a safety impact on the citizens who live there. In recent years, many more families with children have moved here, and it makes it even more worrisome. It used to be that children with minimal supervision could play in the street safely in the summer, but that would be out of the question in this circumstance. So then it goes on to off-street parking requests as far as access to Sunnyside. So she continues to say that my point is that if the state cannot accommodate such reasonable requests with traffic as it is, how much worse would the safety of the road be with increased traffic, which is bound to come? The intersection of Ridge Road and Wallenta is already difficult, and increased traffic would endanger our safety and to that of our children here who live here, and much worse. Most of the traffic along Ridge Road is headed down to Wallenta to Lauder, which is already a serious safety hazard with inadequate off-street parking, and many students crossing without regards to vehicles. I hope that you carefully consider these difficulties and not approve the conditional use permit as stated above. I believe there are other opportunities for a building site not too far away. And that's all I have for those.
So, just for clarification, of those 3 letters, 2 are for and 1 was against.
All 3 of these were in opposition of.
Oh, I misunderstood you at the beginning then. Okay.
Correct.
Please, step up to the mic, tell us your name and
Yeah, hi, I'm Suzanne Senior, and I live at 415 Conestoga Drive. And I am here to talk about what it's like to live in my neighborhood right now. I live on Conestoga. I live about 1,000 feet from where the school's going to be. If Sunnyside opens up, it's going to be a direct route past my house. Conestoga's wide, and down at the end of Conestoga, it's wide and the hill goes down. Everybody passing through Conestoga in front of my house is either going too fast as they speed towards the stop sign, and the kids that live in that area, or gunning up the hill as they go up to the other stop sign to go through up to the university. It's hard to live in my neighborhood as a pedestrian. It's hard to live in my neighborhood as a cyclist. So I'm here to advocate for denial of the conditional use permit if Sunnyside goes in. Does Sunnyside Road have to go in? I say do one or the other. I don't doubt that Palouse Prairie is a great school. I go by all the time and I see the congestion there and I worry about the parents. I'm a former charter school parent myself. But do we have to have both? Does my neighborhood have to get that much more dicey in terms of cars to satisfy their needs? So is there anything that says that Sunnyside has to go through?
Actually, I'd like to, before we have another person come ask, my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, that regardless of whether we have a school or houses or apartments or anything, Sunnyside's required to go through, is it not?
Correct, yeah. It enters in first edition. City Council approved that in 1993, and that was a condition that Sunnyside be connected to, from where it terminates right now, to Palouse River Drive.
Can that be reversed? It isn't built yet.
This isn't a part of the discussions tonight, so that would be up to City Council. 2010, they had a development agreement. As Ryan mentioned before, it was developed into 7 phases. Right now, this would be Phase 7. Part of that development agreement that the council approved in 2010 was that as soon as there's a building permit that's pulled on any of this property, whether it be the Palouse Prairie charter school property, the property 1.34 acres to the east, or the southerly property on the south side of Sunnyside, that the improvements of Sunnyside be put in.
Okay.
So,
and were those improvements supposed to benefit whoever then develops in that area?
those were a requirement of who developed that property to put in those improvements. So regardless of the school going in there, there could be any use allowed in the R3 or R4 zone, so you could have multifamily apartments go in there, and they'd be required to put in the street, and there'd be no public hearing because those would just be permitted uses within that zone.
Okay. Then I hate to be in a position to advocate against a wonderful school, but I also have to look out for my neighborhood, for my everyday well-being. We pay property taxes. We're going to continue to live there. I'm sorry, but people who come through this school aren't going to be there that long. As you can see, there's students that have been there that are there now. So I just have you consider, I pay my property taxes as the city asks me to support livability. And this is going to impact our livability on a day-to-day basis, my everyday basis, not 8 years while my kids are going through school. And I've been a parent too, and I know what it's like when you're late. So please just consider the impact in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Would anybody else care to come up and speak against the CUP? The rest of you must be waiting for the second CUP. No one else? Okay, with that, Catherine, would you like to come up and make a closing statement? Are you good? You don't have to. Okay. I just wanted to give you the option. Okay. With that, public hearing is now closed, and I open it up for discussion amongst the board. Yes, sir.
I have a lot of history with that neighborhood. I've built many houses in that neighborhood. My mom lived in that neighborhood. I was part of the approval process of almost all phases of that subdivision. I was included on the council when the decision was made to put Sunnyside through because it never used to go through. There was also a consideration at one time putting Chinook through. And that was decided against, that we would accommodate everybody on Sunnyside. The additional traffic, like Mike said, I mean, in that zone, they could build apartments. And there would be a considerable additional traffic with that. I think the school is a very good fit for that neighborhood. I think schools should be in neighborhoods and not out next to a state highway. So I'm inclined to support the application.
I remember sitting on this board, I think, when you went into the old Brown's Furniture Building, and that was a long night.
It was all about traffic.
It was a long night, and it was all about traffic. And the one comment I did want to say is, as I understand it, State Route 95, the city has nothing to do with a street light there, and we, yeah. So that's a state decision. As much as a city and everybody would like to put one there, it's not going to happen just based on how the state has things designed. So I agree with Marshall. I think this is a good fit. As I look through the relevant criteria and standards, I don't see one that isn't met. As I understand it, it's a conditionally permitted use. I think it would be in harmony with the neighborhood surrounding land uses. I'm persuaded with the gentleman who talked about this being an anchor part of that southwest area. I agree with that. I don't see this generating nuisances that would be injurious or detrimental to the adjoining properties. I think I do have one small concern, and the lady who spoke, whose mother's there, brought that up. I think that's mitigated by the school. I think they can educate their students on where to be and where not to be. I'm also think that it's compelling when you look at the geography of how they planned it. Down there next to the border, it's going to be a parking lot. My guess is the school is going to have the activities up in the northern boundary, so I'm not convinced that that would be injurious or detrimental. I don't think it's going to endanger public health. As I understand the city's presentation, I think it meets the applicable developmental standards, and I think it will not be in conflict with the comprehensive plan. So as I review the relevant criteria and standards that we have to take a look at, I think it meets them, and I think this is a good fit.
You brought up a point that I meant to address when the question was asked with regards to number 6 and development standards. I'm pretty sure that no one, for any reasons, can cover a manhole, so the path would have to circumvent that in some fashion or incorporate it somehow. It can't just be covered up. Can you confirm?
Yeah, we could take a look at that with our construction drawings. Once we have a little bit more detail from the engineer on this. This is intended to be conceptual, so there's not a whole lot of detail as far as the construction drawings. But, yeah, it would just be like any manhole within a street. You know, we pave around those, and those are unset into asphalt all the time. So I don't see any reason why it depends on the elevation of the manhole. Whether or not it can be inset into some asphalt path. So we would just have to take a look at that. It may be adjusted slightly to the north, to the south to accommodate the existing manhole. So, okay.
I meant to say this is a far better spot for it than where its current location is. I agree with that. I think at the time that we talked about the last one, this place needed a place to be, and they did the best they have with what they could. So I'm pleased to see that they have progressed and grown sufficient to do what they're planning on doing here. So,
yes, the first time it was approved, item 3 was a stretch for being a nuisance and potentially hazardous.
Yeah.
So, Joe, I'd like to move approval of the conditional use permit with the one condition that the city recommend that the 10-foot walking path be constructed.
Okay. Before I get a second, would either of the ladies like to comment on what you've heard in the testimony?
I'm pretty clear on all the details, and I agree with passing.
And I'm also very
I feel very comfortable with citing the school as it is, and having gone to an elementary school whose entire playground equipment consisted of lines painted on concrete, I know how that really hampers kids' ability to grow in their bodies as well as their minds. Putting a school where a park, where there's easy access to existing parkland, I think is, I know this isn't really evaluating it in terms of the criteria, but I would be overjoyed to see the school move from its current site to a place that's more amenable to outdoor play.
So I would second Marshall's motion.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to approve the CUP.
Mr.
Right?
Chair?
Yay.
Just a clarification. I think the condition was that it be dedicated to the public via an easement.
Okay.
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 That's correct.
As it's worded in the...
It is an easement.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. So we have 5 ayes. It passes unanimously. We're mostly there. We need to address the criteria. I don't know if someone wants to take a stab at those from the beginning. I have a recommendation. The applicant actually produced responses to those criteria that I felt were relatively indicative of what the city would normally provide us, and it is on page 6 of 7. If you would like to look at that.
Could you see if we could quiet down the crowd?
Actually,
What's that?
you guys want to look at items 6 through 7.
And Joe's saying, let's take a 5-minute recess when we get done with this to
I am.
Us to take a recess?
oh, well, before we start the next one, I
Yeah,
think
I was planning to do that. We've got to go through our 7 criteria, so if you can move out into the hallway so that your talking doesn't.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you, really.
Hopefully our mics won't pick up too much ambient noise right now. But on that sheet, the 7 criteria are listed there with. When I read this earlier, they seemed pretty straightforward. They might be a starting point for us.
Yeah.
You could certainly direct staff to prepare those, and then we'll come back in about a week to have the board approve them. So I think
Okay.
that's kind of...
Do we want to?
Yeah, I move that we direct staff to prepare the relevant
second that.
criteria.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Mike.
It is unanimous. All 5 of us are in agreement with that.
Bill's doing a rocking good job on these.
Yeah.
With that, I first of all, I thank you folks for being patient since you were second tonight, but I would like to take just a 5-minute recess. For anyone who'd like to use the restrooms, they're right there. They might be busy, so I believe there are some downstairs also. And we'll just take a 5-minute recess and come back here at 8:30. Welcome back. I want to thank the other half of you for your patience this evening. And Ryan, would you like to present the next CUP for us?
Certainly. Right, so the second so moved agenda item is for a conditional use permit application for Erber Auto at 407 South Washington Street. The proposal is the applicant is proposing to operate an automotive repair and service shop for 5 employees at the rear end of 407 South Washington Street with vehicular access from the alley. The application proposes to have vehicular access to the property via alley access from 4th Street and enter the building via an existing roll-up door on the east side of the alley. As part of the conditional use, the owners of Erber Automotive have included a detailed circulation and vehicular queuing plan. The operating characteristics: the business named Erber Auto will operate from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday with 5 full-time employees. The business will provide basic automotive services, maintenance, repair, and replacement of various automotive systems. Their goal is to provide an automotive service to the downtown area and to reduce the long wait for mechanical services within the city. As you can see on this slide, we have the subject property located at what is currently identified as the Follett Building. The owner of the particular premise is Michael Follett. And you can see Washington to the east. We have 4th Street to the north, and across from 4th Street we have the Moscow Police Department. Friendship Square to the northwest. Main Street to the west, and to the south we have 5th Street. Again, we have some street side shots of the current location as is. And a little bit of background, the area is a 2,089 square foot subject property located within the western half of the Follett's building. A 50-foot by 125-foot lot situated mid-block between 4th Street to the north, 5th Street to the south, one-way alley to the west, and Washington Street to the east. The property is comprised of 3 separate tenants within the property, 2 of which occupy the business street frontage and are in conformance with the permitted principal uses for the central business zone and are not part of the conditional permit request. The tenants include a counseling center under construction to the northeast, currently an undeveloped space approved to be a martial arts studio to the southeast, and a separated common hallway between the 2 spaces that lead to the subject property in discussion. Erber Automotive will be located to the rear of the space on the western half of the building, and adjacent properties are also located within the central business zone, and the uses include professional offices and city police to the north, the post office and federal offices to the east, mixed-use retail, residential, a local gym, and an art gallery along Main Street to the west. As you can see here, we have the subject's floor plan. Again, the identified in red would be where the subject property is currently located. And it's a little bit cut off, but the roll-up door is at the edge of that particular property line to the northwest corner of that interior space. Zoning, the area falls within the central business zone. And the intent of the central business zoning district is the principal purpose of the central business zoning is to provide location for groups of compatible commercial uses having the common characteristics of not involving more than the incidental and minimal assembly, fabrication, or storage of commodities. Permitted uses would be repair shops for commodities such as household appliances, bicycles, and shoes. Conditional uses would be gasoline service stations and car washes. These uses shall be subject to a detailed view of traffic and circulation plans. Limitation on uses: the operations conducted on the premises shall not constitute a nuisance beyond the property lines by reason of smoke, fumes, outdoor steam, gases, vibration, noise, hazards, or other causes. Going a little bit into the further details on this, on this particular property, the conditional use as per Moscow City Code, Title 4, Section 11-9, subsections B25, it states that a use permitted in one or more zoning district is defined by this zoning code, but which, because of characteristics peculiar to such use, or because of size, technological process, or equipment, or because of the exact location with reference to the surroundings, streets, and existing improvements, or demands public facilities required a special degree of control to make the use consistent with and compatible to other existing permissible uses within the same zoning district. Automobile service station, as it states in Moscow City Code, states simply that to see gasoline station. So we look at the definition of a gasoline station according to Moscow City Code, and it states that an area of land, including the structures thereon, that is used for the sale of gasoline or other automotive fuels, lubricants, and auto accessories, and which may or may not include washing, lubricating, or other minor servicings, but no painting operations. And again, repair shop, it states in the Moscow City Code Title 4, Chapter 3, Section 7, subsection B3, as far as a repair shop, there's no definition. So it basically states that repair shops are permissible under other zones. However, it doesn't give the clear definition of what a repair shop is. And again, Section 11-9 lists authorized uses. This basically states whether or not the question is whether a specific use is encompassed by a list of use shall be subject to the zoning administrator's reasonable discretion. And so that's kind of the topic of point. What do we define what a gasoline service station is and the scope of work that would be provided underneath those services? So we're looking into access now. Primary access and parking areas are within 1 block of this overall district. Subject property is highlighted in red. Again, everything within the downtown central business district is stated as there's no parking requirement for said businesses within a central business district. Primary access is from northbound State Highway 95, identified as Washington Street within city boundaries. The westbound onto 4th Street without connectivity to the main street. Southbound on to the one-way paved alley, and east and westbound on 5th Street. Secondary vehicular and pedestrian access, basically we're looking at alley access for vehicles in and out of the shop. And again, this is one-way alley looking north to the subject property. We have 3-hour parking from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. for tenants and customers only. And to the north, near Opportunities Unlimited, we have 2 ADA stalls. And then as we look into the overnight parking, it's only permissible within designated areas after 5 p.m. So we have the regular downtown parking zone map. And as you can see, areas highlighted in green are areas permitted for overnight parking beyond from essentially 5 p.m. onwards. The 3-hour parking does apply at all of the times from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Again, the temporary loading is permitted in city alleys, but as far as long-term parking or staging, that's really the only permitted use is to allow for loading and offloading of goods or vehicles within that area, sanitation purposes and so forth. Again, we're taking a closer look at the site plan. We've identified that as the alleyway access for that particular location. And here's the detailed circulation plan provided by the design team. The areas allocated in red would be the potential ingress to the overall site. They take, again, northbound Washington Street, westward onto 4th, south into the paved alleyway, and after services are rendered, they will exit out of the roll-up door and down to 5th Street. The areas in green are the available parking within the 1 block distance of the subject property. And again, we have the detailed circulation plan provided by the tenant that's requesting this. So this is a narrative of the circulation plan. It states, to address the issue of cars blocking the alley and overall ease of flow, customers will be required to make appointments for dropping off their vehicles. They will turn left on Highway 95, north onto 4th Street. From 4th, they will turn left again into the alley. Once they get to the shop, the large roll-up door will allow easy and safe access into the shop space. Inside the shop, there will be parking spots for vehicles whose service has been completed. In rare cases that there are more completed cars than the shop can hold, Urber Auto will have an overflow parking lot for customer services a short walk from the shop. In addition, there may be many public parking spaces near the shop for customers to use. These spaces are used by customers of downtown businesses. When customers come to pick up their vehicles, they may be able to walk in the front door on Washington Street and down the alley to the shop space. After payment is received, they'll simply drive out of the roll-up door into the alley and onto 5th Street. If a customer's vehicle is parked in the public space or at the overflow lot, an Urber Auto employee will meet them at the car upon pickup to finalize transaction. Please note that any vehicles moved from the shop will be moved by either an employee or the vehicle's owner. Urber Auto is very aware of the Moscow Police Department's uses in the alley on a regular basis. In order to leave their station and head to the south, Urber Auto will not block or hinder the Moscow Police Department any more than the current delivery trucks who also use the alley. Again, here is the parking agreement signed with the Corner Club. It states Urban Auto LLC will hereby rent 4 spaces in the lot behind the club. A map attached to the next page shows the designated lot. Rent will be due on a monthly basis at a rate of $100 per month. Payment will be due upon the first of every month for the following month's usage of the parking space. This agreement is not a lease or a commitment to a certain time frame, but simply an agreement of payment to space usage. This agreement can be canceled at any time with a month's notice by either party's dissatisfaction. This agreement will commence on February 1st, 2017 and end at an undetermined time. And just for identification of the overall site, there is an included site plan. This particular triangular parking spot is an unpaved parking lot. It's designated as a private parking lot at the intersections of A Street, Washington to the east, and then at this point, the Highway 95 is back to its principal uses to the south. Public Works feedback, they stated that the lack of private parking may prove challenging for this type of use in the downtown business district, but this is a common situation in urban centers and therefore not an unusual condition for a new business downtown. The availability of public parking will vary based on location, time of day, day of the week, and time of the year. And 3-hour parking restrictions in areas where overnight parking is available or prohibited. The use of the parking lot will be subject to the parking enforcement regulations, as is the case with all other downtown uses that rely upon public parking spaces. Police Department feedback. Chief Fries expressed concern that the normal business of vehicles going into and out of the mechanic shop will cause a disruption to the police department's ability to respond to emergency calls for service, such as well as conducting normal business. This also causes an undue risk of having officers back up into the emergency situations if or when the alley is blocked. And the police department experiences difficulties getting out onto Washington Street from 4th Street during high traffic times, and the alley is their only other option. Limiting access to the alley is already a concern or an issue with buses directly across from the police department on 4th. Moscow Police would not be in favor of limiting emergency access down the alley or south for police personnel. Considerations. Off-street parking requirements do not apply within the central business zoning district. On-street parking is provided for public and customers of all downtown businesses, and the City of Moscow does not provide assigned parking within on-street parking areas. Public Works has a detailed right-of-way use permit that would allow a temporary closure of an alley, street, or parking stall or sidewalk to protect the safety and welfare of the public, assemblies, parades, or while the premise is under construction or maintenance. Conditional use recommendation. The community development staff remains neutral for the application for a conditional use permit at 407 South Washington Street for an automotive repair and service shop with no recommended conditions. At this time, I'm looking to open up any questions to the board.
Joe, I have some questions, if that's okay. You go back to Tubac. Well, you're even to the beginning. This is described in the materials we have as a automotive repair and service facility. Is that right? But the application before us, and presumably your understanding of how it was applied, is for a gasoline service station?
Correct.
So could you explain to us, and I'll have follow-up questions, of course. Could you explain to us how this use is a gasoline service station? Because if we don't answer that question, we really can't consider anything else.
Sure. So the city code is designed for having basically an open zoning or open to interpretation. The overall use of this site, based off of the applicant's submitted business plan, stated some of the uses within, or they would be in conjunction with, the gasoline service station as far as those services rendered.
Okay, so the problem is that an auto repair shop, under no definition or common sense understanding that I could come up with, is a gasoline service station. Let me explain why I say that. And this is a problem, because if we can't decide that it is, we can't approve it. So beginning with our code, a garage, this is the colloquial traditional understanding of a garage, which, proving that I'm a land use dork, is also the definition found in the dictionary, which I can demonstrate to you. So this is the code. It says a building or portion thereof designed and used for the storage, rental, repair, or servicing of motor vehicles or boats as a business. So under our definition of the code, this is pretty clearly a garage. The garage, according to Merriam-Webster, is a place where cars are repaired or serviced. And in fact, if you're familiar with the standard industrial classifications that OSHA puts out, gasoline, this is an automotive repair shop, establishments primarily engaged in general automotive repair, which is an entirely different classification from, and specifically defined, gasoline service stations, which are primarily engaged in the selling of gasoline and lubricating oils, which might have minor other uses. That is also consistent with our zoning code. As you noted, doesn't define gasoline service station, but defines automobile service station, which refers back to gas station, which is defined as a use that's primarily for the sale of gasoline with minor servicing.
Correct.
So you add all that together, and to be honest with you, if you asked 100 people on the street, I think, other than the applicant, they would all have the same answer. This is not a gas station. Under any understanding of that, it's a garage, and garages are only allowed in the industrial district. So I don't know how we get past that.
Sure.
And I know you would prefer that Mike address my questions.
We've been working on this as far as the definitions, and we've been in touch with the city attorney as well. Mike, did you want to?
Yeah, you certainly, I mean, like we discussed earlier, you certainly have similar uses across a lot of zones. Right now, as you can see on the screen, automobile service station points you to the definition of a gasoline station. Looking underneath this zone, those are really the couple of uses that you can see as being this use. The gasoline station, there was a repair shop, but it lists household commodities, shoes, appliances, things of that nature. So you really couldn't make the stretch that this was a repair shop for some type of household commodity being an automobile. Looking at other
You're saying you cannot make that stretch, is what you're saying.
You couldn't make that stretch, no. I mean, we have a definition of repair shop, as Ryan stated here on the screen, or we have a use that's listed as a repair shop, but there is no definition of a repair shop. So traditionally, within the motor business zone, we have a lot of automobile service stations. So you've got Midas, Moscow Auto, Les Schwab, Denny's Auto on Palouse River Drive. All of these are within the motor business zone. The definition or use of garages, like you had just stated, isn't within that zone. It's a use that's along with automobile trucks and larger implement service and then it ends with a garage. Within Section 11.-9, the code does give us a certain amount of reasonable discretion in determining whether or not a specific use that's presented to us fits within one of the uses within the zones. We made that reasonable interpretation that the definition of a gasoline service station fit this proposed use. It does say that sale of gasoline or other motor fuels, oil, lubricants, and auto accessories, which may or not include washing, lubricating, other minor servicing, but no painting operation. And so looking at the scope of the use that they're proposing, the only thing that I could say would be questionable would be the minor servicing. So looking at their scope, they have a lot more major servicing with engine replacement. We had the city attorney take a look at this, and it was his conclusion that this would be an allowed use and it would fit underneath the definition of gasoline within the central business district, but the scope of the work that they're proposing to do is a little outside the scope of minor servicing. So, what I would suggest to you is if you feel a little uncomfortable as far as the use meeting that exact definition of a gasoline service station, that you can impose a condition that would restrict the use to only minor servicing.
Well, so to be clear about my point, that definition, the OSHA definition of gasoline service station, the Merriam-Webster definition of a service station, the primary use is the sale of gasoline. And so what that is intended to refer to is a gas station.
Well, usually we only consult the dictionary if there isn't a use that's defined within the zoning code.
Right. Well, if it's not defined under traditional statutory interpretation rules, you would consult the traditional definition, right? And we're not interpreting on a blank slate here. We're interpreting in the context of what words mean. And the traditional, as far as I can tell, the traditional definition, and again, I'm referring to the standard industrial classification, which has been in place since 1937, of a gasoline service station, and it specifically refers to what we understand typically as a business primarily engaged in the sale of gasoline. And that's consistent with that definition. The first thing is the sale of gasoline with other minor uses. And that is, this is not, under any way I understand it, primarily interested in the sale of gasoline. It's a repair shop. And as I mentioned, I mean, I will give you the ambiguity with repair shop in the motor business district because it simply says repair shop without the commodity clarification. Right? So those are considered different. And if you want to say that includes auto repair shop, I don't have enough to tell you that that's wrong. But garage is clearly defined in the code. This is a garage. There's no question about that. It is a repair shop. It's a garage as defined in the code. And the only place garages are authorized is in the industrial zone or as a repair shop, I'll admit. But this is not a gasoline service station. Under our code, under a traditional definition, under OSHA's definition, I don't know how we say it's a gasoline service station. I mean, this is kind of just making up a definition as we go and ignoring all the rest of them. That bothers me.
Yeah, I mean, staff came up to the conclusion, as well as the city attorney, that the proposed use is included within the definition of a gasoline service station. And so, you know, the board is certainly up to, it's your prerogative to interpret the code as, you know.
Right, as pointed out before, that is
certainly
precisely what we're here to do.
Certainly.
So, can I jump into another bit of the code?
Sure.
I would, just from a pragmatic standpoint and not knowing the standard industrial classifications, it does seem like there's a real bifurcation nowadays between gasoline stations, which are places where you go and you buy something, which is gasoline. You're probably also going to go and buy soda pop or motor oil, and repair shops where you go and get your car fixed, and which often, as in this case, aren't in the business of vending any gasoline. But I was really looking at limitations on uses, where it says operations conducted on the premises shall not constitute a nuisance beyond the property lines by reasons of smoke, fumes, odor, steam, gases, vibration, noise, hazard, or other causes. And having had to have way too much work done on my car this week, I'm aware that there's an auto repair shop generates a lot of noise because they've got that, for example, the sort of compressed gas units that are used to make things move, make things turn. There's an assortment of chemicals and lubricants. There's definitely a distinct odor. It's a very manly smell. Those guys coming, your car's ready, ma'am. Yep, smells. Yep, I know where you work. You work in an auto repair shop. And then we also, so there's vibration. I think there's substantial noise. And I'm very concerned about hazards because not only could people wander, having right up against the alley this big roll-up door, I'm concerned about kids wandering in there. I'm concerned about clients of opportunities, perhaps.
Let's get on
there.
With the hearing before we get into that.
Okay. Sure. Anyhow, I'm just saying I think we've got some questions under Section E2 as well.
Marshall?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to come to any resolution on the definition tonight on this. My feeling is it's been reviewed by the community development staff. It's been reviewed by at least one city attorney, and they have moved it forward to us. So even though Jerry may be right, I don't know. I'm not an attorney, but I trust our city's attorneys, and I would recommend we go forward with the hearing tonight.
I'm not objecting to going forward for the hearing, but I want to make sure we all understand the very first thing we have to make a determination about as a board is whether this is a conditionally permitted use in the zone. That's the first thing we have to do. So unless we can come to a resolution as to whether this is a gasoline service station, we cannot approve the proposal. And my second point, and I bring this up regularly just to remind us of what we do, one of our tasks is to act as the appellate board to review decisions by Mike and the rest of the community development staff. Specifically, this isn't the precise circumstance, but when they make these kind of decisions, we would be the body that would either agree with or overturn their determinations. And the city attorney exists to advise us, but it's our decision to make what it means. City council is the only body that can tell us we're wrong. Right, so I want to make sure we recognize that. That's what we're tasked with doing, is deciding what that means. That's our job.
To follow that up, I agree with both of you, and what I'm going to say is I don't want to postpone it or try to deny it right off the bat, because quite frankly, we are that appellate board, and we can make a decision, right or wrong. Any one of you can appeal it to the city council. So for that very reason, I think we should go ahead and proceed. You make a good point. You make a good point. I'm going to make one later, because we have, even if we agree to its use or what we're defining it as, we still have 7 criteria that we have to approve in order to pass it. So,
yes.
With that said, do we have any more questions for city?
One quick one.
Go ahead, Marshall.
Even though there is no required parking in the zone, the applicant has procured some parking spaces to be used up by the Corner Club. Has it been checked, Mike, make sure that that is not city or state property?
It's owned by the Corner Club owner.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
That's correct.
See, that does bring up one question. I know this has come up in the past and relates to when and if the couplets get removed and the rights of way are restored. I mean, is it's still private even if the routing were changed?
Correct.
It would still be, yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay.
Okay, we still have a pretty big group here. I want everyone to have the opportunity to speak that wants to. We're going to deal with this the same way we dealt with the first one. I will ask the applicant to come up and state their condition, or not their condition, what they're attempting to do with their project. Then we'll have positive for this, negative for this. Then I'll give the applicant a chance to speak again, and then we'll close it. As a reminder, we've got the clipboard there, so to help Ann out, please sign your name and address on that board, as well as stating it into the microphone. With that, would the applicant or the representative for the applicant like to come up to the podium and tell us what you're planning to do?
Good evening. Before I begin, would it be all right if I did half of this and ask my co-owner to come up and do the other half?
Sure.
Thank you. Just a little bit about us. The idea for this started last year. When
Please state your name
Oh,
and
I'm
address.
sorry. Isaiah Taylor. I'm co-owner of Erber Automotive. And this is Kip down at the end there. He's another co-owner. Jonathan Erber is our head mechanic.
And your address?
421 East 6th Street, Moscow.
Thank you.
Would you like me to sign the clipboard too?
Yeah, but you can do that at the end. You're good.
Thank you. So the idea for this started last year, actually, while I was working for Jonathan, just turning wrenches with him at his house. And he hired me to do that because he had so many vehicles just from community members bringing them to him that he couldn't keep up. And I realized that this community trusted him so much, not only as an auto mechanic, a talented mechanic, but also just as an honest man, that just by word of mouth, he had more business than he could handle. So I talked to my business partner, Kip, about it. And while we were looking into it, we discovered that there's also a huge demand in the Moscow area for quality auto work. In fact, a lot of the shops were booked out for weeks in advance. Since then, we've been talking to community members and friends about the idea, and the response is consistent that there is a large need for quality, honest auto work in the Moscow area. We chose the downtown location because this is really a Moscow shop with as much character as the shops on Main Street. We're a small capacity shop with a unique venue. We have interior design and marketing that's been geared to jive with the rest of downtown Moscow feel. We feel that this is another unique addition to downtown Moscow. Our service is personal, it's professional, and our mechanics are true craftsmen, and we feel that this would be an amazing and unique addition to downtown Moscow. And if I could ask my co-owner, Kip, to come up and finish it. Thank you.
I am Kip Mock. I'm also at 421 East 6th Street. Before I begin, I'd like to address your concern, sir, and your concern, ma'am. I'd just like to say a couple brief things about that. So you have made it clear that in order to move forward with this discussion, we need to determine whether or not we actually fall under this definition of a gasoline service station. And I just want to fully admit, it kind of seems like a stretch. I mean, it says gasoline service station. But I would just ask you, all of you, as we consider this topic, if you would just set aside your initial worries about this issue and consider the benefit that this auto shop could have to downtown Moscow. And then as we consider that, please consider using your discretion that you do have and also taking into account what the city attorneys have determined. And as you do that, please take that into consideration and use your discretion to make this shop happen, because I hope to show you why that will be a great thing for downtown Moscow. As for your concerns, ma'am, as to noise and odors, I just wanted to make it clear that evaluators have determined there are 18-inch thick brick and concrete walls on either side of the shop, and evaluators have determined that the noise will not be increased anywhere beyond normal traffic driving along 4th and 5th Street and going through the alley. And I believe that was, it's actually in the information packet that you guys have. So with those couple things addressed, I'd just like to talk about a couple concerns that have been brought to our attention about the shop opening in downtown. The first concern was brought by Chief Fry about traffic through the alleyway, and the other concern has been from a couple local business owners who are worried about parking. After this information was compiled and after this presentation was made, we actually acquired more parking spaces closer to the auto shop. So we have 4 down at the Corner Club, and we have 2 behind Chang Sing that we are now currently renting. What this means is a couple things. First of all, in order to eliminate the risk of clients stopping in the alley because they don't understand the risk of officers needing to get through the alleyway, what we will do is, I'll just run through our traffic plan right quick. Our plan is to have customers park in ordinary city spaces while their car is being checked in. And then we will have one of our employees move the car to our Corner Club lot unless there's room in the shop immediately, in which case it will drive directly into the shop. And after that happens, after all the work's done, the car will be moved out into the lot behind Chang Sing for the client to pick up later, as that's a closer lot. Now, with that traffic plan kind of established, I just want to discuss what Chief Fry's concerns are. As we've established, there really aren't any parking concerns. We're not going to be infringing on local businesses' parking. Chief Fry's concerns were clearly that emergency vehicles need to be able to get through this alley. We totally agree, and Isaiah and I have personally met with him and discussed this issue, and we have worked out a couple solutions involving things like, instead of coming directly down 4th Street where the police officers are needing to back out, instead coming down 3rd and going through the alley all the way, and that way our employees are able to check, make sure no emergency vehicles are backing out, and then continue on into our shop. This also will be the case as when they're pulling out of the shop, they won't be backing out, they'll be driving directly out of the shop. They will have the time to take, pause, make sure no emergency vehicles are needing to use the alleyway, and then proceed out. And I'd just like to address a little bit about the capacity of our shop. We are planning to operate in the realm of 9 to 11 cars coming in and out of the shop a day. So we are not going to be drastically adding any traffic to this alleyway, nor are we going to be blocking it. So with that established, I'd just like to talk about 2 benefits that we will be bringing to downtown Moscow and to the Moscow community as a whole. Now, there have been a couple local businesses that have been concerned about parking. I've addressed that. Now I'd like to address something that we will be bringing to these local Moscow businesses. instead of having a shop that's half a mile or a mile out of town that you have to sit in a waiting room waiting for your oil to be changed, what we'll actually do is have a shop that is right in downtown Moscow that you can walk 20 feet to the Yarn Underground or the Co-op or the Storm Cellar. And what this does is it just brings business to local Moscow shops. And we believe this to be a wonderful benefit to downtown Moscow. So not only does Urber Auto's stylistic feel it isn't just very congruent with Moscow as a whole, it also provides business to local shops that do the same thing. And the final benefit that I'd like to address, and Isaiah touched on this a little bit, but this is the fact that Moscow needs more auto work. Moscow does need more auto work, and I've already addressed why I think it should be downtown in this location, but I think it's clear that having more auto work is extremely necessary when shops like Meineke and Moscow Auto Service are having issues being backed up in bookings, and it's honestly become an issue where getting auto work in Moscow is kind of like trying to get medical work in Canada. It's not something that you can actually get done quickly. And I think bringing Urber Auto into downtown and into this location will help solve that. Thank you.
Kip, I have a question for you.
Yes.
In terms of the traffic control plan that you stated, would someone from Urber Auto be driving the cars in and out of the, or at least into the garage? Or would the customers be doing that?
Yes, that was a mistake on the presentation. We didn't get that information across correctly. Since we got the lot closer to the shop, we don't have the necessity of keeping the cars in the shop until customers arrive. So what that means for us is no clients will be driving their cars directly into our shop in order to avoid issues with the police department because, of course, our number one priority is making sure that emergency vehicles are able to get in and out of their location. So, yes, only employees will be driving cars in and out of the shop, and, of course, all of them will be very aware of the situation and how we must handle the traffic.
So for clarification then, a potential customer is not going to be parking or even a car running out in the back alley waiting for someone to open up the garage door for them to pull in?
No, sir. Okay. That will not be the case.
Thank you. Any other questions for Kip? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, I want to open it up for public discussions and comments in favor of this CUP. Please come up and state your name and address, and also before you leave, please write that same information on the clipboard.
Hello, my name is Daniel Fukushan. I live at 739 South Hayes Street, and I'm also a business owner one block away from the proposed Urber Auto. Last week, my brakes went out, brake fluid leaking, and the first person I called was Jonathan Urber, and they're still not fixed. I'm driving our secondary car. I think that this is very needed for Moscow, and as a business owner downtown in an office space, I'm also aware that I think this would create less of a parking problem than the same amount of space used for offices, especially with the way they're using the parking. So I think it's compatible with our downtown plan. And going down that alley almost daily, there are times where I can't get through it because of trucks that are parked there. And the way they are approaching this plan, I think this would be far less of a problem with blocking the alley than the current problems with trucks parking are more of a problem than this would create. So I think that wouldn't be a very good objection. So I would love to see this. I think Moscow needs it, and I hope you approve this plan. Thanks.
While he's signing, would anybody else care to come up and speak in favor of this plan?
Good evening. My name is Jeff Sprague. I reside at 1425 View Street in Moscow, and I think this would be a good plan, and I think this would be a benefit to this community on a couple different levels. First level is because of the backlog for auto repair in Moscow, people do rely on their vehicles quite heavily to shuttle children back and forth to school or various practices and getting back and forth to their own places of employment. to have your primary vehicle incapacitated for 2 weeks or more, it puts a real crimp on logistics for your family, and also just makes life very hard. And I know some of my own friends, they take their vehicles into Pullman or down into Lewiston. So we are losing potential revenue here in Moscow because these people are going elsewhere to take their business to have more expedient services. And I think that would be a benefit to Moscow to keep more revenue in here into our city. That way we can be a stronger, financially stronger city, keeping some of our own revenue here, and also the convenience of it. And being downtown, it's pretty central, so you could actually have, it's in walking distance of Moscow High School, so if your child is there, they can walk down, meet you as you pick up your car and stuff like that. It's just logistically a sounder plan than driving outskirts or even to Pullman or even to Lewiston. So, thank you.
My name is Jonathan Erber. I reside at 824 North Leith Street in Moscow here. I wanted to respond specifically to the comment about odors from the shop in the downtown area. I know that can be a problem. There are shops that I have been in where that is a strong problem, but there are also shops that are not. Those of you that have been down to Denny's know that he keeps a very clean shop, and it's not one that you walk into and get hit with the smell. And even some of the dirtier shops, I would say around town, that you smell the smell of automotive fluids upon entering. As soon as you leave the premises, none of the ones that I have been to here in town are able to be smelled outside. So something to keep in mind. I think if we take care of our shop and keep it clean as we intend to, that will not be a problem both inside the shop and out. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Danny Bradley. I live at 609 North Almond Street, number 4030. And I wanted to just reiterate what people have been saying about bringing more revenue and business to local shops downtown Moscow, but with one slight addition. So I am a freshman at New St. Andrews Downtown College, and so I know that there's, and not just at New St. Andrews, but also at U of I, people, or Pullman, people who are new freshmen who are coming into town with cars that might need a reliable local business owner like Jonathan Erber to work on their car for them. And the thing about a private company like that is it's a little more affordable than some of the bigger name companies. So if I'm a freshman coming in and I want an affordable shop to put my car in, Jonathan Erber is going to be the first person I call in all likelihood. And especially since he's right downtown, when I get my car worked on, I know it's going to be really convenient for me to go check out the surrounding shops, just get familiar with the town. So I think just the point of incoming college students or even returning college students needing a place to put their cars is extremely important.
My name is Keziah Friedel. I live at 519 Northwood Avenue here in Moscow. I'd like to add a little bit to what Danny said. I met Kip Mock and Jonathan Erber last August when I moved here, and I've been very delighted with the level of honesty and hard work that I've seen in them. Shortly after I moved here, my vehicle broke down, and I was warmly recommended to Jonathan, and I was able to take my vehicle to him, and he was able to fix it quickly and at a very reasonable cost. So something that I was very grateful for that he was able to do, and I would like to see him and Kip have the ability to serve this community, as I believe they will do very well at this shop. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Veronica Cooper. I live at 1830 Victoria Drive here in Moscow. And I would just like to add that the building of Urber Auto downtown won't just add revenue to other businesses, but it will also create jobs downtown. I'm hoping to work there as a secretary. And the creation of jobs will not only create jobs at Urber Auto, but it'll also create jobs at other places downtown because of the increased revenue. And I would just like to point out that that would be helpful to downtown, especially with a community that has so many people in needs of jobs with all of the college students. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marshall Gallagher. I live at 803 Resident Street, Moscow, Idaho. Many people have beat me to the things I wanted to point out about the positives of having it at the downtown location, the excess revenue. But one thing I really wanted to point out is this last summer I had a major car problem, and I called around, tried to get multiple different prices at different car shops. It was my only vehicle. I had just moved here, and I was like over 3 weeks out, and I travel a lot with my vehicle. And so I was recommended to Jonathan, and he got me a quote which was substantially less than anybody else in the community, which was wonderful. And he was on time with the repair. He was quick, and I really appreciated that he kept me up to date. I think a lot of times with larger automotive shop repairs that we have, those fine details kind of get thrown through the cracks, and people don't necessarily know your face. But having a little bit smaller repair that can do all those repair shop that can do those major repairs, they'll remember who you are. You'll have a much more personal face-to-face interaction, and that's just a really beneficial thing.
Is there anyone else who would like to get up and speak in favor of the CUP? Okay, seeing none, I would invite those who would like to come up and issue concerns about the CUP.
My name is Greg Kimberly. I live at 1415th Tatuna here in Moscow. And for clarification, I own the adjacent building next to Mr. Mr. Follett. I'm not here to speak for or against. I have some concerns because we are next door. And I spent a little over a year meeting with Mr. Follett about possible purchase of that building myself. So I'm very familiar with the building. My biggest concern is the noise issue. The building's been under construction now for several weeks, and I'm pleased that something's going in there. But I can tell you there have been more days than not that during the construction that we can't even hear ourselves on the phone or in appointments next door. And so that is a concern of mine. And my portion of my building that's not rented out is next to the place where the auto repair shop would go. So I am concerned about noise, but I also know it's important that these guys, if you decide that this is appropriate, to have a chance to operate. And I would hope that if there are concerns, that these guys are out talking to us in the neighborhood and making sure some of them are addressed. When we had the snow situation a couple weeks ago, we spent a day shoveling the water out of the back of our building because it was coming from the back of the building where they're going to operate, and there was a substantial amount of water. Mr. Follett took care of it right away. It's just I don't think the guys understand the wall is very thin. Well, it may appear that. It's very thin. They can certainly hear us. We can certainly hear them. And if they're doing a lot of repair work, I would have some concerns about that. But I'm also not afraid to go next door and have a conversation with them and see what we can do to work together. So I think the chief of police addressed the issue. We have police cars zooming through there all the time, and that's been a regular mainstay of the situation since I've owned the building for several years. And if those things can get resolved, I'm more than happy to work with them to see what we can do to not only benefit their opportunity to have their business, but also our opportunity to succeed in the businesses that we have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bev Bafus. I live at 417 Pintail in Moscow. I'm also a business owner downtown. I did send a letter. I noticed you didn't read the letters, the emails for this one. However, my main concern is I don't feel that this is actually a permitted use, your number one criteria. So I would like you to really, really look at that. I don't believe that a repair shop is a permitted use in the downtown business district. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, for clarification, all of the correspondence for against this particular CUP were included within the packet. So that is part of public record, and it was submitted prior to the requirements.
Hello, my name is Michelle Stone, and I live at 116 North Howard Street. I am the owner of the Yarn Underground at 409 South Washington Street. And first of all, I would like to say I am pro-business, but I feel that some businesses are better suited for the downtown area than others. I oppose the granting of a conditional use permit that would allow an auto repair business to operate at 407 South Washington Street, and here are the issues that worry me most. Number one is the parking. The proposed business has stated it will employ a total of 5 mechanics, and I'm not sure how that only adds up to 9 to 11 cars a day. I'm worried that it will be closer to 40. I'm not sure where they will be parking. Number two, I think fairness to other businesses is an issue. The proposed business had stated it was working towards gaining dedicated parking at the end of the alley for only its use. And as public parking spaces in Moscow are owned and maintained by the city, it may be an untenable position to consider dedicated parking for this, and therefore, in fairness, all downtown businesses. Number three is increased traffic. In just the past 2 years, over 10 accidents have been recorded in the police logs for the corner of 5th and Washington. Perusing the daily police log for just one day in December 2016, I found 2 accidents for the same day on the corner of 4th and Washington. These are very busy intersections. Number 5, police mobility. We've talked about that, but it's really not hard to see a scenario where all of the access points to the police station are blocked at the same time. It does not seem prudent to sanction increased use of 4th Street and the alley. Number 6, the alley is a service alley. It is for loading and unloading. It is a narrow, one-way, unmaintained access alley full of dumpsters. There is no parking available, and when one car stops, nothing else moves. The garbage and recycling services have a difficult job accessing the dumpsters already without an extra, I'm not sure how many cars passing through in a day. These are my most concerning issues for me that arise with this proposed business, and they are all external to my own business. Within the walls of my business also lie the concerns of nonstop noise and dust creeping under the walls as it is with the current construction. I am sure there is a space around town that would better suit this proposed repair shop. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sarah Holden, and I live at 1013 South Hayes Street in Moscow. I am also a local business owner. I own Altered Ego, which is actually quite a distance from this place. But to me, in my experience, the concern is not to the noise to the road and the sidewalk. It is to the building itself and the other business owners and, the businesses within that building. My business is in the McConnell building, and I can attest that these older buildings, even with brick walls, that smells and sawdust seep through. Another business close to us, actually we're upstairs, and it's down on the main floor, and actually a couple stores over, they were using turpentine to strip their floors, and we had to be evacuated because smells do their thing. And we're also right above Tapped, which is a good smell, but even with that, they make their way up there. And let's see. I'd also like to say that my husband is a mechanic. He has been professionally trained and has been working on vehicles for 20 years. And I love my husband, but the way he smells, really, it is quite manly. And, it smells. And from being in his shops, I can attest that smells leaking from the shop area, like even if there's a designated room for the working on the vehicles, it still will pass through the walls, and in this case, going to the other businesses. And I know that people are excited for a shop to complete work faster, but I also know that services, if your car really has a lot of issues, it's going to take a while to get done. Parts need to get ordered. It just takes a while to do. Not that that's going to be all the time, because having a place to get a quick oil change would be awesome. But I do feel this place really isn't meeting that zoning definition you guys were talking about earlier. And if perhaps we won't be able to do it today, but what we can think about is we could define what the minor services were under the gasoline station was, because, should it be limited to just oil changes? Is that all they can do? Or should there be a limit you really can't change an engine because that's going to cause a lot of noise and be disruptive and all that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marissa Gibler, and I signed in during the last testimony, but I guess I can do it twice if that's necessary. Okay. I feel strongly that the conditional use permit should be denied. In addition to the discussion about police and emergency vehicle access, it was mentioned that there are frequently delivery trucks parked or idling in the alley. It does not seem prudent to me to rely on an entryway for the garage that is so regularly blocked. Also, as a parent of 2 young children who frequently walk downtown, I am also concerned about the safety of pedestrians crossing the alley on the 5th Street sidewalk. Drivers exiting that alleyway are often seemingly unaware of pedestrian traffic. Any addition to traffic is too much, in my opinion. I'm not aware of any other businesses that have used that as an entry or an exit other than delivery things. This would clearly cause more traffic than that, just bringing the cars in and out. I wanted to point out that the majority of the testimony I heard in favor of this business centered on the honesty, integrity, and low cost of the mechanic. And I would submit that while reassuring to potential customers, it has nothing to do with the zoning involved. And I don't know if I said my address, 425 Beach Street, that's where I live.
Hi, I'm Christy Rember. I live at 954 and a half Grant Street. I'm actually representing Opportunities Unlimited at 119 East 4th. We are the corner property there on the alleyway and 4th Avenue. We work with people with developmental disabilities. We teach them basic life skills. We are in and out of the community all day crossing that alleyway. Our participants have physical disabilities, mental disabilities, their spatial awareness, their surrounding awareness, ability to move out of the way. For a lot of them just is not what a neurotypical individual would be. So I do have concerns with increased traffic. With my clients crossing there, we cross there for fire drills, evacuation drills. That corner parking spot is a 10-minute loading zone, which is where Smart Transit, the private transport, comes to pick up and drop off our clients. The wheelchair ramp comes down on that side towards the alleyway, so that is where all our clients get on and off the bus, which can be difficult in the winter with all the snow and the compact ice. When other people are using the 10-minute spot, which is a concern with customers wanting to drop off their car constantly all day, being in that 10-minute loading zone to go check in or check out, then the bus does block that alleyway to get our people on and off. There's other transportation companies that go with our clients to Troy and Viola and Kendrick, who then have to park behind the parked cars for our clients to get in and out, which, is not always safe, especially with the cops coming out. And then, the other alleyway from 3rd is blocked. And then if I have the bus blocked, the alleyway, cars are trying to come in to get to the repair shop, there is a huge potential for it to be a big jam for my clients to risk being hit because they don't move quick, they aren't aware. And I know they address the smells and the noise, which with the building between us, we probably won't hear the noise that much. But my concern is the 6 to 9 months of the year when it's warm, if they have those garage doors open for airflow, that if the smells and the noise, echo up the alleyway. IDAPA code 160321 500-02 for DDA states facilities of the agency must be designed and equipped to meet the needs of each participant, including factors such as sufficient space, equipment, lighting, and noise control, which would also include smells. So if they do have those doors up and that noise echoes up and disrupts our clients' learning, we're in automatic violation of the IDAPA state code. We're a nonprofit, so really we would have no choice but to not work in that back half of the building during the day when it's noisy. If it disrupts our clients who have sensory issues or just can't hear, and my staff having to talk louder, we're automatically in violation, and there's not much we could do about that. So those are our concerns for our clients with this proposition.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Hebert. I live at 613 South Garfield Street in Moscow, Idaho. I did send an email yesterday. I don't know if you got it, but if you want, I can quickly read it out. Okay. So I was just writing to express my concerns about the conditional use permit that we're discussing. I posed the proposed auto service and repair center at 407 South Washington for the following reasons. Moscow City Code Title 4, Section 35A states that the principal purpose of the Central Business Zoning District is to provide a location for groups of compatible commercial uses having the common characteristic of not involving more than incidental and minimal assembly. And many of the auto services listed in the information packet involve more than incidental and minimal assembly. The second point, the city code also state when they talk about conditional uses for the central business zoning district, one of them being gasoline service stations and car washes. That's been discussed at length already, but pretty clear that it is not a gasoline service station or a car wash. Third point, in the city code, Title 4, Section 35E2, which talks about operations conducted should not conduct a nuisance beyond the property lines, smoke, fumes, odor, etc. Again, I'm not going to go into detail there because that's already been discussed by others as well. One of the things that could be done is, it sounds like there's already noise traveling through the walls, and that needs to be addressed. And the circulation plan, again, that's been discussed as well. In the packet that was provided, it says that Erber will not block or hinder the Moscow Police Department any more than the current delivery trucks who already use the alley. that last sentence actually doesn't make a lot of sense, because even if the time spent per vehicle in the alley during entry and exit from the service center is no more than that of current delivery trucks, the number of vehicles using the alley will still increase, and therefore increase the chance that the police department will be blocked or hindered when they need to use the alley. And then also in the packet, they state that in the rare cases that there are more completed cars than the shop can hold. They've talked about overflow parking. I'm just thinking about human nature. And to me, this seems like a very inefficient way to run an auto service business. If you constantly have to go and move your clients' cars, park somewhere else, bring them back, and I think there's a reason why auto repair centers are not located in really dense downtown business areas. There's not a lot of room for that amount of traffic, and you want your business to be efficient. To me, this seems like one of the most inefficient ways to run an auto service business. So those are my concerns, and again, I oppose this CUP. Thanks.
Hello, my name's Kelly O'Neill. I live at 710 Maybell Street. I've been a resident of Moscow now for almost 10 years, and one of the things that I love about our downtown is that it's so vibrant and that it's very pedestrian friendly. And I think having a business such as a gas station or repair shop downtown would be detrimental to safety, to pedestrian access. The increased traffic going in off of Washington Street and then going out the alley onto 4th Avenue, you're cutting off pedestrian walkways. And with all the business that it sounds like this shop could generate, it's really a safety concern. And the fact that it's an alleyway, to me, it seems like it would be privatizing a public road that would essentially be for a business. And I really question the use of alleys if they are supposed to be for private businesses. And then, of course, being close to the police station, I see problems there with safety. I don't think that this is a compatible business for downtown. I think it's great that these gentlemen are doing a good business, and it sounds like they have a lot of customers who really appreciate their business, but I think there are better places than downtown. And then finally, if they parked their customers' cars at the corner club, that's several blocks away. And again, customers would have to walk across Washington, which is a very busy street. There's a corner there, so I don't really think that's ultimately a good choice for their customers. So when you look at safety, pedestrian accessibility being cut off because of the use of the alleyway, the harmony and the aesthetics of our wonderful downtown, I just don't think it's a good fit. And so I'd ask you to consider denying the conditional use permit. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Diane French. My address is 202 East 7th Street. I own a business on Washington Street between 6th and 7th. I have the great privilege of having a window in front of my desk where I can look out over Washington Street. And over the years that I've been here, almost 30 years, there's been a dramatic increase in traffic in downtown Moscow. We all love the fact that it's pedestrian friendly, and I think we'd like to keep that. Most of my points have already been made, but one thing about Washington Street is we have the post office between 4th and 5th, And sometimes during the day, Washington Street is actually blocked by the mail truck backing into the post office parking lot. So that's yet another source of congestion downtown. And I am also curious about using these parking spaces at the Corner Club and behind Chang Sing. I think we should check out the zoning and see if they have actually extra parking places that they can use for that. I know a lot of businesses in Moscow have a certain minimum required number of parking places that they need to have, and so they don't have any that they can lease to other businesses for their use. And I think that the description used by the owner of a bit more traffic through that alley might be, I'm sure, his good intention, but knowing what rents go for in downtown Moscow and knowing that he's expecting to have 5 full-time mechanics and other associated staff, I think it will take more than 9 to 11 cars per day to be able to afford all of that from a business standpoint. So I think all of these things need to be carefully reviewed. One of the things you all have to consider is if this is in harmony with the surrounding neighborhood and or businesses. And I'm thinking it might not quite be a good fit. I wish Mr. Erber and his companions well. I think that this is probably a needed business in Moscow, but not the right location, and I ask you to deny this conditional use permit. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carrie Morsick. I live at 923 South Jefferson Street in Moscow, and I want to be clear that I'm here as a private independent citizen, but I'm also the store manager of the Moscow Food Co-op, and my opinion is definitely informed from my years of experience working there, where I've seen all of the concerns that have been raised tonight. We watch the emergency personnel leave the police department and come down 4th Avenue multiple times a day, and in my opinion, if even one emergency response is delayed, that's too many. We watch accidents happen on Washington Street. I've personally seen more than 3 accidents just looking out the window at the co-op. It's an area that's already more congested than is safe, and to add to that congestion, I think, would be irresponsible. And finally, parking. Kip mentioned that, we'll have a couple parking spots and people will get their cars checked in while their cars are there. That's just not the reality in downtown Moscow. People go around and around and around the block looking for vacant parking. It's a serious problem, and this would only exacerbate it. So as an independent citizen, again, I implore you to reject this proposal. Thanks.
My name is Loretta Campbell. I live at 402 South Main Street, which is also known as Hypersped Sports. All the other points have been made. You gentlemen have some of the best things that you can ask for in a business. You have incredibly good reviews and incredibly loyal customers. My main concern was the one that was brought up as an alternative of, instead of entering on 4th Street, was actually coming on 3rd Street and entering. Also, as a frequent visitor to the wine company of Moscow, I walk up that alley very frequently, and it's blocked consistently because the trucks are not only getting to other businesses where they can't actually block the police station, but they're delivering to CJ, or Champions now, and things like that. So I don't think that alley will actually be as accessible as you believe it to be, having been, I have to squeeze through it very consistently. The other thing is the dumpsters that are in the back. I have to actually shovel out my dumpster, so for my recycling and everything, so that the trucks can actually access it. And there are some times where they can't, and if they can't access it, they leave. And they'll try to come back around and pick up my recycling later, but if they can't fit it into their schedule, then I'm just hosed for the day. So it's, again, adding more congestion wouldn't be the best. And then the ultimate thing is, again, the harmony. And also, a garage is very different than a gasoline station. So at the heart of all of this, defining that definition, I think, is really what you all are tasked here tonight. It's not about whether this is a good business. It's not about whether or not you all are good business owners. It's simply that definition of figuring it out.
Anybody else care to come forward and speak? Last chance. Owners, would one of you care to come up and make a final response?
All right, that was fun. I would like to apologize. First of all, there was a mistake in the packet that I think caused a lot of the concerns that were addressed here. There will not be 5 full-time mechanics in the shop. There's 1 full-time mechanic and 2 part-time mechanics. I'm not sure how that was communicated incorrectly, but there is only 1 full-time mechanic in the shop. And I think that puts more into perspective the number that we presented of 9 to 11 cars a day. I think that's a reasonable number. And personally, I think if we had that much business, we would be really happy. I think that's a bit of a, a dream. So I think that's a very reasonable number, 9 to 11. Another thing is, I know it was a little bit hard to keep the parking plan in mind, but there were a few misconceptions that we heard up here. One of which is that, to remind you, the only people that will be driving, representing Urber Automotive in the alleyways will be Urber Auto mechanics, which are the people that you see here today. Clients won't be driving in the alley. And I think that means we'll be much more aware of risks that have been brought up. And it will, it means we can be watching for emergency vehicles leaving. We can be aware of, less accidents, that sort of thing. There was another concern about blocking more than loading. This just a reminder that cars won't be stopping in the alleyway. We have space inside of the garage to actually pull in and park cars inside of it if we need to. So cars are never going to be in that alleyway unless the intent is to either take them straight out of the alleyway into Chang Sing or straight from the corner club into the garage. So there won't be any stopping or loading. And at 9 to 11 cars a day that are just, through traffic, I don't see that being a huge burden. As to the type of business that this is, being a garage, I think we've tried to emphasize, but I'll do so again, that this is a very unique business that I think will go in very well with the rest of downtown Moscow. I like to just be in downtown Moscow while I'm working. I'm a computer programmer myself, and so I frequent actually a lot of the businesses that the owners have come up today, and I just love the feel of downtown Moscow. It's really personal, it's fun, and our business is going to reflect that. That's why we're wanting to be downtown, is because we're wanting to be Moscow's auto shop. And to that end, we're doing interior design around that. That'll just be, awesome little downtown Moscow auto shop, small capacity, unique location. Again, apologies that information was incorrect in the packet. I think that really brought up a lot of the concerns that we heard up here. As to some of the concerns that this is an inefficient business plan, efficiency is not as big a concern to us as quality. To that end, for the first few months at least, we're only going to be running at 60% capacity, meaning we won't be taking as many clients as we could because we're wanting to ensure as much quality as we can possibly get. The people that we're hiring love working on cars, and they're really good at it. And so to start off with, we're going to be at low capacity, and that's just to further show that 9 to 11 number is going to be smaller at first, and that'll be when we're figuring out our traffic flows and all that kind of stuff, how we work with the police department. I don't know if we mentioned that Kip and I did meet with Chief Fry yesterday and worked out solutions with him as to how all that is working. So we just want to let you know that we are extremely conscientious about all these concerns, and that being in this part of downtown Moscow is a big priority for us from a marketing perspective, meaning that that's the feel that we're going for, is being part of this awesome community. I would like, if I could, to have other members come up and finish it. Thank you.
Two quick things that I wanted to comment on. One was the comments about sound from next door. That's definitely something we'll want to look into. The technology in cordless power tools have advanced to the point where, if necessary, we could forego air tools altogether. That was a decision that we almost flipped a coin for, whether we would go for air or cordless. Cordless is significantly quieter. Also, the structure at the back of the building is concrete and brick all the way up to the roof, whereas the front of the building, where the construction is happening right now, that is not the case. It's a much different construction up there that doesn't bring the walls all the way up, sealed up to the roof. So we're open to work with surrounding businesses, and we'll be careful of that. On the topic of smell, the two most pungent fluids are transmission fluid, which we are not going to be. I'm sorry. The most pungent fluid is transmission fluid, which we will not be servicing. The other common smell associated with auto repair is improper venting of exhaust. If vehicles are in the garage and you're working on it and they're running, that will travel through just about anything. So proper ventilation of those to the outdoors, I don't think that will be a problem. And if I can just refer to Kip to
before you leave, first, I can see who you are, but for the record, state your name.
Oh, again. My name is Jonathan Erber.
Okay, that we all knew, but
okay,
just so that we're clear. And then a question for you.
Sure.
If transmission fluid is one of the pungent odors,
yeah,
and I'm assuming that of your services, a transmission shop is something you are not.
That's correct.
Would that hinder in any way if that became a condition that we were to place on this CUP, that transmission work is not allowed?
That would be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, could I ask a question first
sure.
before you go away? In the packet we have, there is a document that has Erber Auto business summary and services provided that was provided by the applicants, by one of you. The second thing on the list of services provided is repairing and replacing transmissions, and another bullet is repairing automotive transmissions.
Okay, that would be incorrect. Yes. Yes.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, to be clear, you're saying that the document you provided as part of your application is incorrect?
That is true.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to start off by clarifying your last question. The document provided was actually provided by our realtor, and I believe he actually just took a stock list of auto services and compiled that because I was out of town at the time and he needed to get the documents in. So I believe that's where that misunderstanding came from. But I'd just like to wrap this up with a couple things.
And again, I know who you are.
Oh,
for the record,
Kip
please.
Mock. I apologize. Thank you. So there was one issue that was brought up that I'd like to address, and that was that of parking. It was brought up that we were pursuing city spots, which we were at the end of last year, but after discussion with the city and a couple of you guys, actually, we realized that that wasn't something that was going to happen, so that's why we provided alternate solutions. The next thing I wanted to address was the issue of safety, which, as we definitely mentioned, is the most important thing to us. I mean, I don't want to come up here with the understanding that our mechanics are not going to be safe in their driving habits. And with the capacity we are running, our mechanics will be extremely able and 100% on board with making safety and making emergency vehicle access the #1 priority. And I just want to make it clear that that is the thing that we are going for most.
in this situation. And another thing just about the alley access, just to make it clear that cars will not be stopped in the alley is actually 20 feet wide, and in the space directly across from our garage door, there aren't any dumpsters, so even getting in with a very large truck is actually quite easy into the space, and traffic is not going to be congested anymore. It was brought up many times by many of you guys that there is already a lot of congestion, and I totally agree. Congestion in Moscow is kind of a problem. The question is, are we going to be adding to that congestion? And the answer is no, we aren't going to be adding to that. So with all of that, the last thing I'd like to talk about is one of the last things that was brought up was there's a reason why auto shops don't open up in downtown, and that it's because it's inefficient. It doesn't make sense. And as Isaiah mentioned briefly, I'd just like to expound on this a little bit. While efficiency is important, we're a business, we want to be profitable, the thing that matters to us most is that we add to the community in Moscow and that we provide quality service, and we provide service that is really beneficial to our clients. And we believe having this downtown location is crucial to providing that to our clients. And I just wanted to emphasize that's why we are providing that in downtown. And just because other auto shops haven't done that, it doesn't mean it isn't possible. So with all of that in mind, just like to know if you guys have any questions for me finally.
Sure. Okay, so you just told us that the document you provided as part of your application is at least partly inaccurate. So I would like you to be able to correct the record for us.
Of course.
You have a list of services here, and I'm going to read through them.
Yes, sir.
And I would like you to tell me if it's a yes or no, yes, you will be doing it, or no, you won't. And at the end, I'd like to hear if I've missed anything that you'll be doing.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
So the first thing is repairing and replacing engines. Is that something that you'll be doing?
Under the code that we are operating under, that was something that we were planning on doing, but it's looking like no.
So you want to repair and replace engines?
We want to repair engines. Replacing engines is looking like it's not going to fall under the code.
Well, we'll talk about that later. But okay, so yes. Performing general automotive repairs?
Yes.
Handle powertrain repair services?
Yes.
Handle brake repair services?
Yes.
Scheduled and preventative repair and maintenance services?
Yes.
Repairing and replacing automotive exhaust systems?
Yes.
Repairing and replacing mufflers?
Yes.
Repairing automotive brakes?
Yes.
Performing automotive electric repairs?
Yes.
Performing automotive wheel alignments?
No.
Repairing automotive radiators?
Yes.
Handle wheel alignment and repair services?
I don't believe so, no.
And handle other repairs and maintenance services, presumably. That's a yes. So is there anything that's missing from that list that you'll be doing?
There are a couple things missing. Gasket and seal replacement would be one. Full diagnostics, oil changes, obviously. Stereo installation and repair. Alternator replacement and repair. Battery replacement, and fuel system repairs.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I've got one. I've worked on that building. I've worked on the building to the north. I've worked on the building to the south. Okay. Are you going to have any kind of a drainage in that garage, or are you going to replace the existing one?
I believe we are going to have to, yes, especially considering the concerns that have been brought up, and we have been discussing. I've been discussing that with our realtor, who's been contacting Mike Follett about handling that issue.
Okay. I have a question for you, because I'm going to hit the city up with it next.
Okay.
But the construction that's going on there now,
yes,
is that for you, or is that just storefront stuff?
All of the construction that has happened so far has been in the front of the shop area. It hasn't actually even touched our area yet. They'll be building an office in our backspace, but so far they've only been dealing with stuff in the front, which is why there are noise issues, because the walls in the front are differently structured than in the back.
Let me ask you, is this a permit for your business, or is this a permit that was taken out by someone else just to upgrade the building for leasing purposes?
I'm sorry?
Looks like you got Mike an answer.
The building's being divided up into 3 tenant spaces. There's 2 up front. It's going to be a counseling center, and then I believe a karate studio right next to it. They're talking about the space in the back. There hasn't been any permits pulled for that. It's just the 2 businesses in the front.
Okay.
that are permitted uses within the central business zone, so they don't have to go through a conditional use permit. They're permitted by right.
Okay, that's not where I'm going to go with my next question to you. Any other questions for, yes?
How much traffic do you anticipate will come from parts vendors bringing parts into your facility during the day?
During the day, just on a daily basis, I would have to talk to Jonathan about that. We are going to be operating through All Data, which contracts out to a couple auto companies. AutoZone will be our biggest. 1 or 2 a day. Okay, 1 or 2 a day.
I have a couple questions. In the case where a customer's vehicle needs to come in by tow truck,
Because of traffic issues in the alley, we will not be accepting vehicles that cannot drive into our shop because we don't want to cause blockage.
okay. And then my other question, your customers as pedestrians down the alley, for them to go pay their bill, talk to you about their repairs and so forth, you're going to have several customers per day walking down that alley.
In the
right?
alley? Well, we do have a pedestrian, a walk-in entrance from the front, so I'm not sure if we could actually take a look at the plan later.
Correct. So as the plan looks, there's a common hallway that separates the karate studio and the counseling center by a 2-hour firewall, and then on the eastern portion of that property is where that particular location would be. And I'm going to pull that up for you right now, Annette.
Okay.
We've got a copy of that too, right?
I can see here, but I don't know if anyone else wants to see it. Yeah.
There's no north arrow, but this is north.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
That was it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. And before I let any of you guys talk, I have a question for the city. And it has to do with what we're calling this place. Because at some point, they're going to need to pull a permit to do the work on their building. And that permit is going to have to be issued and the plans reviewed and the inspector reviewed under what this building is. And I'm actually working on a fuel island project right now, which is a gas station, and it has all kinds of industrial fuel code-related things that would be required in a set of plans that this doesn't address. So it goes right back to Jerry's question in that how the city is going to define this location is how it would review the drawing set and approve it. Everything from oil water separators in the ground to how the HVAC system deals with air circulation and air handling. So I guess how the city is going to review that set of documents in terms of what this occupancy type is going to define how we review this.
Well, the zoning use and the building use are typically different. The building code defines specific uses different than zoning code terms.
It does. And so if this is considered a hazardous use and a gas station, if we're calling it a gas service station, would literally require fire walls, which are different than fire barriers and fire partitions, and I don't want to go into all the code stuff because no one out here cares, but you would literally have to completely separate that structurally from the other different uses. And so I'm asking the city, what is this going to be reviewed under? Because that would then define Jerry's question.
I know. I think you're asking those guys an unfair question. They are not building officials, they're zoning administrators.
Yeah.
I think you're asking them an unfair question. The building official will set the occupancy, and then he'll check all the fire separation walls, whether it needs to be sprinkled, he'll check the ventilation. I think you're asking them an unfair question.
But the city is asking us to review it as a service station. So if we're going to provide a conditional use permit. And I'm willing to go down that route because the whole garage service station, I took my vehicles to Martin's Auto Service forever. And I wish Wayne was here in the group because you guys are young enough, you may not remember it. I do. And they dealt with a lot of cars right downtown. It was awesome. So that mixed use and compatibility is a hard one to argue against and sell me on because that was a successful business and it was there for years and years and years. But that's not where I'm going with this. What if the code official, who I know is not you, is reviewing this, they're going to I don't see how they can review it as something different than we provided a conditional use permit for.
Well, there's going to be automotive servicing. So regardless of whether you say it's a gasoline service station, there's going to be an automotive servicing component, and that's going to be the same in the building code. They've looked at this and determined that there's a 2-hour separation required between that rear tenant space and then the counseling center as well as the martial arts studio. So 2-hour separation's the only thing that's required. There aren't sprinklers that are required. There's no more separation to the south or to the north. It's an 18-inch thick brick wall, which meets 2-hour separation requirements.
Okay. Questions? Oh, comments? Actually,
okay. I guess I've got mixed feelings on this one. I look at historically what has been down in downtown Moscow, and you say that you're old enough to remember that. Well, I'm older than you. So, I mean, we talk about Martin's Auto Service. I can remember transmission services down there, muffler services down there, general repairs ones. I remember when Ambassador Auto was down there. So historically, there have been those types of businesses in downtown Moscow. We also look at talking about vehicles accessing their businesses from the alley. Well, Hodgman Associates right next door has 2 parking spaces in their garage. You go down the alley a little further, you look at Powell Plumbing, McCoy Plumbing. They all access their businesses from the alley. So I am hesitant to tell somebody they can't access their building from the alley when businesses right next door and in the neighborhood do the exact same thing. I did hear some legitimate concerns about noise and fumes and things like that, and we talked about those 18-inch brick walls. I've worked on those 18-inch brick walls, and the mortar's about ready to fall out of them. So what they are is they're actually 3 layers of brick in there, but in some circumstances you can see daylight through 3 layers of brick. So one of the concerns that I heard from Mr. Kimberling, who's right next door, about noise and fumes and things like that, I would suggest that they make sure that there's no fumes and daylight coming through those walls, that they actually are 2-hour walls and not just brick. That's a concern I'd have. We talked about blocking the alley for emergency vehicles. Well, Friendship Square was actually designed that in an emergency situation, the police department can go right across the sidewalk right to Main Street. It was designed for that. Not saying it's a good idea, but in an actual emergency, that is an out for them. It was designed for that. So, like I said, I've got mixed emotions on this place. But one of the things I keep reminding myself is it's a conditional use permit. In my opinion of the conditional use permit, if it's listed as a condition in there, I have a hard time turning it down without, maybe you put so many conditions on it it isn't feasible, but I have a hard time flat blanket turning it down.
We'll talk about that. All right, might as well.
Go ahead. Let's talk about it.
So before I go, I have to ask my colleagues up here to indulge me a little bit. They know me and the staff knows me, but nobody else really knows my background. I perceive my primary role here as being the person that cares the most about the legal language. I'm a law professor and a lawyer and specialize in land use, and that is the thing I care about. So most of my comments actually, the first comments are unrelated to the specific use, but what the code says. And the way I look at this, first I want to just as to mention or to respond to my colleagues, fellow board members, is I appreciate that there used to be different uses downtown. The world has changed, of course. You recognize that. And City Council has made determinations about what's appropriate downtown. The code was
adopted, at least according to the code, this version originally 2005, and has been amended multiple times up through August 2015. And so this is a document that's responding and identifying what should and shouldn't be allowed downtown. What they've said can be allowed are gasoline service stations. What we've been presented with is a business that will repair, and if they could, would replace engines, will perform general automotive repairs, handle powertrain repair services, handle brakes, preventative repair and maintenance, repair and replace exhaust, replace and repair mufflers, repair automotive brakes, perform automotive electric repairs, repair automotive radiators. We've gone through this list: gaskets, diagnostic, oil changes, stereos, alternators, batteries, fuel systems. What you did not hear, of course, throughout that was the sale of gasoline. On its face, this is not a gasoline service station. So we have to decide somehow whether we can justify it as a gasoline service station, because if we can't approve it. On the one hand, we have city staff saying it is, and we have no explanation for why. City attorney allegedly claimed, or I believe you, that he says it's okay, but we don't have any explanation for why it's okay, just the bare assertion that this is a gasoline service station. On the other hand, all common sense and regular definitions that we could possibly refer to say that it isn't. So the standard dictionary definition of Merriam-Webster of a service station is a gas station. Our own code, when it talks about service station, refers to gas stations with their primary purpose is to sell gasoline. I referred to the standard industrial classifications earlier, and these were enacted or created initially in 1937 to facilitate specifically this type of organizations, partly in reference to what Joe was talking about, so that we could have standard approaches to all of these sorts of issues. A gasoline service station is a specific category in the standard industrial classifications. It is defined as a business primarily engaged in selling gasoline and lubricating oils. They frequently sell other merchandise such as tires, batteries, and other automobile parts, or perform minor repair work. The primary thing we look at in deciding whether it's a gasoline service station is what its primary purpose is. If it sells gasoline, that's what it is. In a totally separate industrial grouping are automotive repair shops. Completely separate industrial grouping. Those are the things that are primarily engaged in general automotive repair. So looking at our code definition, characterizes this as a garage. Looking at the standard dictionary definition, which also would characterize it as a garage, and the standard industrial classification, which characterizes it as an automotive repair shop, there is literally no way to claim with it, other than the mere assertion that it is a gasoline repair station, or that it is a gasoline service station. The reason this bothers me is because it sounds like a completely arbitrary definition designed to serve this purpose, which is the definition of arbitrary government, which is precisely what we're here to avoid. We can't simply say it's an automotive or a gasoline service station because we want to. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to apply the code as it's written, and City Council has said this is not the type of use that we want downtown. There's nothing I can do about that. I highly recommend that if you don't like it, if we deny it and you don't like it, you appeal it to City Council. Those are their decisions to make, not ours. This is, in effect, a request for a rezone, which we're not allowed to do. So that's under Criteria 1. I cannot see how we can legitimately claim it's a gasoline service station. There's been nothing that I've heard to justify that, given all the contrary evidence. Second, and this one's shorter, the second thing we have to determine is whether the character of the proposed use will be in harmony with the neighborhood and surrounding land uses. We've heard a lot of discussion, including from Marshall and Joe, that in the past these things have been allowed downtown. As we look at, somewhere in my documents, as we look at the modern zoning code and the types of uses that are allowed downtown, there is nothing other than, again, the thing we're talking about, gasoline service station, of this type. And you can see that on the face of downtown today, that we don't have anything that does this kind of business. It would be a new and unique and potentially useful, I'm not arguing that, but it would not be consistent with existing uses downtown. It is potentially I'm not as concerned about these last two, although I'll mention them so you know what I'm worried about. It is potentially in conflict with the comprehensive plan, according to our packet. City staff prepared. The purpose of the urban commercial or the downtown commercial district, is to have an intensive use of commercial and residential uses in a pedestrian-oriented manner. This is exactly the opposite of a pedestrian-oriented use. It could be conceivably consistent with that. I acknowledge that. But that is our focus. And then the final thing, and I believe this could be addressed with conditions, but it is a significant concern, is the issue with the police department and the potential to slow down or affect emergency response. And that is a big concern to me. But I think it goes back to the fact that I cannot see how we can justify this as a gasoline service station. It does not sell gasoline. They've not even used the word gasoline in their entire presentation. It's an automotive repair shop, which is authorized in other zones, but just not in this one. So that's what I've got. And again, I'm not saying it's not a good idea. It could be a great idea. It's just City Council has said it not a good idea that should happen here. My students is sitting in the, two of my students are here, and we talked today about the essence of zoning is separating uses like this, and it could be a good use in the wrong place, and that's what this is. It's a great use, but just in the wrong place.
Thank you. Other comment?
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, I think, under Criterion 5, the proposed use will or will not endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed. And I am very concerned about police and emergency vehicle access in an alley that already has issues. And I also took to heart the issue raised by Opportunities Unlimited that we have some members of the public who have particular needs and whose ability to function within their current site is going to be compromised if we bring a use like this in there. But I guess the other thing that I'm wrestling with also is the location, design, and size will or will not be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. And right now we're not even talking about streets, we're talking about an alley. And this is an unusual, I think it would be wonderful to have a conveniently located auto service facility downtown, because it is a real pain to have to drop your car off on the outskirts and sit there, or else have to connive a ride or take a good long hike to get back to your workplace downtown. But I think that although Hodge has some parking apparently in the back of the building and McCoy has some truck access in the back of the building, this is the first customer-facing alley use that I can think of in the city of Moscow. And an alley and a street they're different things. A street is meant as and I'm not getting into any dictionary definitions, but although I'm certainly not above cutting through the alley when I need to get someplace, these aren't set up to be public streets. They're set up to be places where tasks happen, like the pickup of the recycling and the pickup of the garbage and deliveries by vehicles that wouldn't be able to access the buildings from the street side. And I'm just very concerned that this is trying to turn an alley into a public street when it was never designed to be that. And Moscow prides itself on being a pedestrian priority zone and all of that, but I think having customer service dependent on an alley just doesn't make sense to me as a good placement for this business.
I disagree completely. Cool. And the reason why is that using the entry of the alley to unload participants, using the alley to unload, those uses are taking up time, but they're still access. What they're proposing to do is access, and it's actually not even blocking anything. In terms of being a pedestrian community, we're talking about an alley, not a sidewalk. The sidewalks are for pedestrians, and there isn't one in the alley. So with all the testimony I've heard, how the alley is used, their use of the alley, and the alley is for use of all the businesses, all the pedestrians downtown. Their use of it is honestly the most quick and efficient, and not in opposition to what the police department is coming through that alley doing. Their cars aren't parked there. A loading truck is. And the loading truck actually doesn't have the driver actually right there where they can move it when the police car's coming through. So, in my opinion, that part of the argument is irrelevant. My concern comes back to what Jerry's saying and what I mentioned to the city. It's the actual use and the construction of the building, not the access in the alleyway, because that's not meant to be for pedestrian. It's meant to be for access for business use.
So
Mark, comments?
Yeah, I do have comments. I like Marshall, have mixed feelings about this. With regard to criteria 2 through 7, I'm prepared to accept those. I think we can make those work. I am agreeing with Jerry with regard to number 1. There was an individual in the national news this past week who said sometimes when you're judging things, you have to do things that you don't agree with, but you do them because that's what the code says. And I think that's right where we're at. I find myself wanting very much to approve something like this. I think there's lots of, I agree with many of the comments here. I'm just having trouble with criteria number 1 because I think it is a stretch when we're trying to turn something into a gasoline station that is pretty clearly a garage. So that's where I'm having trouble from. Just a legal reading of the code. As much as I want to agree with this, I'm really struggling with number 1. I think Jerry's arguments with regard to number 1 are persuasive, in my opinion. But like I said, I want to be clear. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can make those work. It's just number 1 that I'm having a hard time with.
I agree. The sound nuisance can be controlled. A hard surface actually migrates through and reverberates back. So by putting soft surfaces on, they would actually mitigate the sound going through the wall to the neighbors and actually reduce the reverberation coming back to them in the garage. In terms of the odors, the proper drainage and the proper ventilation are going to deal with those. So I'm on the same page as Mark. I don't think 2 through 7 are an issue. I think I don't have an issue with those. One's the problem. No matter how much I want to do this, I just don't see how we can deal with one.
I guess I take the path that says I have trust in our city staff with their interpretations. I have, including community development and our city attorney and our city supervisor, that it is their interpretation that this would work. And so therefore I can get past number 1 by trusting the people that I know. 2 through 7, again, I think there are conditions we could place on there to mitigate and make this work.
That said, if we were to deny this, the applicant could appeal it right back to the very city council and attorneys that are our roadblock, who could then say, yes, the city attorneys I don't know what the right
Marshall,
is, but
I apologize for saying this again, but our job is specifically to not trust what city staff says. One of the specific things this board does is handle appeals from their decisions. And that means we have to if they have legitimate arguments in favor of their interpretation, that's fine. And I would have loved to have heard what Rod had to say about this, but we didn't get an explanation. We got the bare assertion, which, for what it's worth, is a failing grade on a law school exam, as a couple of people standing up here might remember. Or sitting up here might remember. You can't just make the bare assertion. We expect the explanation, especially here, where we have to justify why we think this is a gasoline service station. And at the moment, we don't have any legitimate justification for that. So I understand, I totally appreciate what you're saying, and I understand the motivation for it. But again, our role is not to trust. It's to consider carefully and to take a hard look at their decisions and tell them they're wrong when they are wrong. And I think this is one of the cases where they're wrong. Rod's a good attorney. He's a city attorney. He's not a land use attorney, but our specialization is specifically in doing this. That's what we're here for. So I appreciate the point. I disagree, obviously.
Yep. Well, I can certainly read you his response to the question.
I would love to hear that, actually, yes.
A gasoline service station as defined under the code includes automotive oil change businesses. The business is required to sell gas or oil, fuel, lubricants, and is also allowed to do minor servicing of vehicles, which would include routine maintenance of vehicles such as replacing brakes and mufflers. Anything that makes a motor vehicle inoperable, other than the brief time it takes for routine change of fluids or replacing brake pads, for example, would probably not be considered minor servicing. Public garages are specifically listed and permitted in the industrial zoning district and is only used in connection with heavy equipment servicing as well as automotive and truck servicing. For example, it would include such operations normally associated with truck stops.
Okay, so I want to respond to that last part, but I should note there's a couple problems with the analysis. The first is gasoline service stations, as noted, the primary purpose should be to sell gas. That interpretation suggests that anything that also might sell gasoline or other things could count as a gasoline service station, which means that the name and the definition is completely meaningless, because you could take any use, sell some gas, call it a gas service station. And I think that's problematic. It's intended to be the primary use. This is not. The purpose of this is not, the primary use of this is not to sell gas. And that's related to the second point. The definition says minor repairs may or may not be part of it. So a gasoline service station may have minor repairs, but will be a gasoline service station without any repairs. I don't want to read the list again, but it's hard to interpret that list as being minor repairs, because it's basically almost everything you can do to a car. He did exclude replacing engines and the transmissions, of course, but most of the rest of it, it's hard to understand how that's minor repairs. And the final point, and the last one you said, the permitted use in the industrial zone that includes garages is listed as follows. Automobile, comma, truck, comma, and heavy equipment service stations and garages. And the easiest and the best reading of that is automobile garages, truck garages, and heavy equipment garages, not a garage that is all three. And if you don't believe me, you can look at any other use in the zone, for example, in the Central Business District, which as a permitted use is a church, comma, a synagogue, comma, a mosque, comma, governmental office, comma, libraries, comma, museum, comma, art galleries, comma, police and fire stations, comma, and similar public or private institutions. There's no way the City Council would interpret that, or anybody should interpret that as meaning the use has to include all of those things. It is a list of things. So I am going to explicitly disagree with the city attorney's interpretation of this, especially in the face of all of the other evidence that it has to be primarily a gas station, which it isn't.
You got a question? If the applicant sold liquid petroleum, or if they sold canisters of kerosene, those are considered gases.
Sure. It's not gasoline.
It doesn't say gasoline, does it?
Yeah, it's a gasoline repair service station.
Well, that's based upon your NIAX term, right? So we're looking at the definition of a gas station here. It says used for the sale of gasoline or other motor fuels, oils, lubricants, and auto accessories. It doesn't say and.
Right,
I mean, it has
but as the
definition of
primary
or.
purpose of the business.
Doesn't say primary purpose. It just
So you're
says used for the sale of gasoline or other fuels.
So you're going to interpret a gas station as something that sells gas or other things as a secondary purpose? We're defining gas station. The term gas station still has meaning. You can't read it completely out of the definition.
I'm going off of the term of the definition.
Yeah, which defines it as a thing that sells gasoline and other liquids and might have minor servicing.
And our interpretation was what they're proposing to do with the exclusion of the more major servicing would meet that definition.
That is wholly arbitrary. I cannot believe that
I think
reading gasoline out of the definition of a gasoline service station could be.
Yeah, I think we're running in circles a little bit.
Okay, so this is what I'd like to do. Annette has not commented. I don't know if I don't want to jump the gun.
You kept using the word primarily, and it's not in this.
That's the point. I was just so we can't read gasoline station.
But it does say gasoline station,
right?
Not kerosene station.
Right. It's there to sell gasoline. Sorry, I'm not trying to argue.
No.
Actually,
Words mean something. I get it.
I'm happy with, if the board so chooses, developing relevant criteria and standards with respect to 2 and 7 that would justify the proposed use. So I want to state that first. But I'm moving that we deny the conditional use application, permit application on the grounds that it doesn't satisfy number 1, because I don't believe, or the board doesn't believe, that it is a gasoline service station. And then as we develop the relevant criteria and standards, in the past what we've done is, when we've done this before, is for 2 through 7, we have said, when it clearly didn't fit, or we agreed that it didn't fit, we didn't develop 2 through 7. We just said because it doesn't satisfy number 1, we did not consider the other criteria. So in this case, I'm welcoming developing those, justifying 2 through 7, denying it based on 1, so that if it does get appealed to City Council and they overturn it, it doesn't have to come back to develop the relevant criteria and standards for 2 through 7. Does that make sense? So I move that we deny it based on failed to satisfy number 1.
Do I have a second? Have a motion? Have a second. We'll go down the line.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nay.
Aye.
Aye. So that's 5-1 that the CUP is denied based on failure to comply with number 1. But as part of that motion, we're going to address items 2 through 7 so that under an appeal to the City Council, they can then justify or deny the city attorney's definition, which would then, Mike?
And you can certainly direct staff to prepare those to review at the same meeting next time.
Okay.
Do we need a motion for that? To direct staff?
I think that it was included within
Yeah,
the
it was
motion.
included in the motion. Yeah.
So we're not addressing 2 through 7?
No. Yeah. If you want a motion to direct staff to develop RCS for 2 through 7, that would justify.
I got you.
Right.
I misunderstood what you meant.
Then, so moved, if that's what we need. If you need a motion, then I'll make that motion.
Yeah. We have a motion for staff to provide a review of items 2 through 7 for us when we do the review of the previous CUP. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Have a motion, have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. Sure. That concludes
We have to
majority,
handle
the majority of the meeting. We still have a couple loose end items. Thank you all.
Yes.
Let's wait just a sec, let them clear out.
It's too many papers.
See you, Diane.
Okay. Okay, election of officers. I've never been through this part.
What's that?
We all just said Joe's going to do it.
Joe, you're it. You're the man.
Yes, well, number 2 is no longer on the board, so.
Are you willing to
I thought you were
continue?
describing them. I didn't know. I don't
After tonight? No.
Yeah, she still has all the stuff. She has all the stuff.
Maybe we should have done this first.
That's my guess.
yeah.
And the compressed distributing canisters and
Yeah,
such.
that's gas.
Yep,
We won't vote
and
for
she
you
does
after
prepare
all.
on all kinds of things in there.
First, you wanted to do it last. Right back.
You're welcome.
Thanks for attending.
Thanks for participating.
Isn't it fun?
Well, I'm glad.
I don't often stay awake this. I rarely go out at night. So this was.
You know, usually they're not this long, and usually we don't have more than one. But the fact that we had more than one and there was, an audience for each is unique. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lorraine? We lost Lorraine.
Oh, we did lose Lori.
Did Lorraine just step out, probably use the restroom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh man, it's so cold in here.
Yeah, I kind of miss having Martin's downtown.
Where was it located?
It was where the pizza, right where
Oh, that's right.
the ice
Yeah,
cream.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, yeah, it's still on radio. She stepped out, I'm assuming just to use the restroom. She is coming back, right?
Yeah, her stuff's still here.
Yeah, her cup. Are we dead airspace? Is that a problem?
It's not a problem. We're just showing you all sitting around.
Sitting around here doing nothing.
We're competing against the 10 o'clock news. Wow, this is amazing.
Late night TV.
That's right.
Yeah, no kidding.
So no break.
Yeah, no break because
I think we'll be
we're
back.
waiting to get back for those
Hello.
Okay, sounds good.
resilient people who are still watching us on TV. Probably realize that we're one down
Well,
at the bathroom.
It's over, but we're waiting for a member
And
to
Mark's
come
not
back
going
so
to
we can finish it.
re-up then, huh?
Yeah,
She went to
my understanding is Mark is gone, Linda's
Okay.
gone, and so
That's
that
all right.
left
This is all of us.
2 open spots, right? And plus our newest member. So
Probably be there by
so we're
now.
still down 1,
Yeah. Okay.
but we're well within the
All right. Well, thank you
to
for
attain a
staying.
quorum than we were several years back when there was only
Okay.
3 of us.
Oh, do you remember that?
Yeah, I
Oh,
didn't like that
not quite.
because everything had to be a unanimous decision, or
Thanks for the
or
call.
it didn't.
So who were the
I'll
three?
call you-
You two?
I'll call you when I get home.
And
Me,
you,
and then it was
one of the Johns.
I thought it was Evan for a while. Wasn't it Evan?
Say it was one of the Johns.
Joe, or everybody, while we're waiting,
Yeah.
I wanted to request something to be put on other business at some, or even on the agenda at some point. Maybe I don't think it'll be a terribly long conversation, but I wanted to be able to participate in the first hearing, but just chose not to. I could not find anything that would legally prohibit me from participating, since I didn't communicate with any of you, and there are no ex parte communications or anything. But it felt more like a cultural thing, right, to avoid for everybody and for us. It seemed unfair without talking about it first. So one thing I'd like to do at some point is have a conversation about that, about how we feel when one of us has to recuse ourselves for some reason, how we would feel about them participating, providing public comments or something like that.
I agree, because I had that same one on the one right before that I had to recuse myself from, and there were 2 things. And
Yeah,
so
I had a situation when a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission didn't agree with the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission, and he wanted to testify on his own, and our city attorney...
Before P&Z.
Pardon me?
Before the commission?
No, he
was on-
wanted to testify in front of the council
Oh, okay.
on a recommendation from the P&Z, and our city attorney said, no, it shouldn't be allowed, and he resigned on the spot. And I was really sad that he did that because he was a friend of mine, but he resigned because I wouldn't let him testify.
So this is slightly different. I mean, if you're recused yourself and don't participate in the determination, then you don't have that problem where you've participated and then want to challenge it. And if I owned a property and wanted to propose a conditional use permit, clearly I'd be able to testify in support of it. There's no, so it's more of a question about whether we as a group are, I think it's okay. I think it feels right to have a member of the board participating and providing comments on a matter that they're totally recused from and have not participated in the decision making. So we don't need to talk about it now, but it's something I want to think about.
Yeah, I mean, if it was your own property, it would just seem natural that you would testify. But if it was like a situation like tonight, I don't know.
I seem to recall we've had, I think I've been doing this now for 15 years or so, but I seem like we've had that happen before. It's been a while, but where if you're recused, because if you're recused and you're not considering it,
you're just a member of the
you want to be a
public.
member of the public,
Right.
and you should have the same rights and privileges as the other member of the public is kind of how I've looked at it. So,
Okay, so changing the subject, I move to appoint Joe chair.
I'd second that.
Wow.
You're doing such a good job.
Well, hold on. If I may, we now have discussion. Are you willing?
I would be willing to do that again for you, because they aren't usually this difficult to run.
If you're willing.
So we got to vote on it.
Well, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye. I nominate Mark as
Oh,
vice chair.
I've done that before. Somebody else ought to. I've been here long enough that I've done them both, so I'm
Does
more
that
than happy to
mean
spread
you're saying no?
That's what it sounds like he's saying.
I just, if somebody else has this burning desire to do that, but I would, if you really wanted me to do it, I would do it. Good. Backup. Good. Apparently Marshall wants me to do it, so
I want you to do it.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second, I have an acceptance. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye. So we have.
Move to adjourn. Unless there's other
Yeah,
business.
I do have one more additional business, and I'd like to maybe include it.
We'll need a vice chair and a second vice chair.
We need two.
So we have to have a third vice chair?
We have
You
Mark's.
have a vice chair, and we need a second vice chair.
Oh, so like a.
In case you guys are both gone.
Oh. Marshall, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd do that. What are the chances?
How many vices do you have?
Marshall's playing the odds on this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, last P&Z meeting, we had a second vice chair running it, so.
Really?
Move to
Okay.
appoint Marshall second vice chair.
I'll second
Okay.
that.
We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have another unanimous decision. Before we close out, on the meeting minutes, which we approved, there was a comment that I want to say you raised, and it had to do with having the county discuss opening, reopening, basically procedural things, right?
Right.
And
So-
and we haven't gotten that feedback, and I'm wondering, did that fall on deaf ears, or were we planning to get that information provided to us?
I think I provided the opinion, and Jerry wanted more clarification, and so I think he was going to reach out and talk to Rod directly.
There's some still, despite, even with Rod's opinion, there's a teeny bit of ambiguity, because the code provides that after a public hearing is closed, we can only request factual information, we can't request opinion. But then Rod was of the opinion that we could reopen the public hearing. And so those two things are kind of inconsistent. That was the thing that I still had a question on. I didn't ask him, I didn't worry too much about it, because ultimately it's up to us. If we decide we don't want to reopen a public hearing because we believe the code says we shouldn't, then we can make that determination. So I wasn't too worried about it, but that's where we left it.
I was interested to know what that was, because I know in the meeting that I had to recuse myself from, it was closed, and then the vice chair chose to reopen it again. And I honestly, I would have made the same decision. As I pointed out at the beginning of this, I try to keep these as friendly and open so people can talk. And clearly, clearly a bunch of people showed up for that, and I wasn't here, but I would have done the same thing, but I would have wanted to know that there was a justifiable reason to, I don't know, break the rule or
As I
coast
recall-
past it, or, it's either we're allowed to or we're not allowed to. Is that, a clear-cut black and white line?
In the city attorney's opinion, you're able to reopen public hearings on a vote of the board.
So by a
Even if
motion?
it's not, yeah.
Okay, good to know.
And do we have a card you need us to sign?
That was the only other thing.
Yeah, I just wanted clarification because there remain inconsistencies within our code about that.
Having a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Do you have the calendars for next week?
No, I